Okay, this is episode 28 of Over Harsher with me, host Harsher, and my co-host here, as always, Harsher, and of course our guests for this episode, Harsher and Harsher of the San Fran Harsher Shock and the Los Harsherleys Gladiators. So, inside, you have to understand, Monty, on some level, we all always were Harsher, but that picture is fucking amazing. His profile picture, isn't it? It's unreal.
So the thing about it, the story of how this happened was he posted it for a day and posted a new profile pic, and I thought this profile pic was fucking amazing. So he switched it back to his old one. So last night, I was like, hey, what happened to your new profile picture? I really liked it. And I said I thought it was really funny. And he's like, well, I feel weird because I don't have the same facial hair. So when I look at it, it makes me feel strange. And I said, well, the only solution is to shave then. So he changed it back. And then I changed to it. And then now like everybody has it. It's so good. It's like a perfect emote.
Because for anyone wondering, in the picture, he basically looks like some sort of like alternate universe version of himself, where he became like a nerd or something, but more of a nerd, a real nerd, not just a gamer, you know. Yeah, became like an accountant or something. Looks like if you pan down, he has a pocket protector in, one of those hats with a little propeller on or something. It's mental, isn't it? It's so bad. But in its own way, it's ball. Like if it was Movember, it'd be cool, but it's just it's not. It's just life. It's just every day, and there's actually no reason for it. So. Right, okay, Monty.
Be a door-to-door salesman.
It's great. I just love the facial expression too. Is so good.
Yeah. Right. Well, obviously, a lot we can get into in this episode. As usual, Overwatch League has not failed to produce drama as well as games and other things. So that's still continuing. The it hasn't flatlined in terms of drama yet. So okay. Our guests, since I actually this is one thing I always do forget to do. Even when I introduce them, I never actually say what their role even is in the game. So we have Surefour, DPS player of the Los Angeles Gladiators, and he has actually been on the show before. He was on one a while back, way back when he was on Cloud9. Mm-hmm. Used to be winning games, better times. Everyone used to think he was really good. Actually, people do think you're good again now. Yeah,
he's turned it all around again.
Yes. Oh, true, yes, actually, when you came on the show, you were losing at that point. Right, okay. Maybe thematic, so I don't know. Well done, Monty. Good casting it. And our other guest is DPS and flex player for the San Francisco Shock, Dante, who actually is a legit flex player. Like, he can actually play, Monty, both Junkrat and Tracer, which my time watching the Houston Outlaws had led me to believe was impossible. How does he do it?
Yeah, Junkrat's a difficult hero.
So, okay. Right, here's the thing. I think we should actually start with the fun part. I think we should just start with basically what we brought up before we went live, before we get into all the matches and the series analysis. Because as I said, actually, I think I underplayed it, Monty, because when I said there's drama again, people are probably like, oh, what happened? Did someone get suspended? Was something really bad happening? No, this is more pointless drama. This isn't even real drama or something real. What happened was, you know how in FPS games, including Overwatch, you can crouch to go down to the ground. Well, if you crouch and someone's body is dead because you've killed them in a game, kind of bad behavior to murder people. Okay, say you've killed someone in a game. You can, if you were to crouch over that, nothing happens. You just crouch and you're over a dead body. But in your mind, you could imply that you were putting your balls into their face. Now, no one does that to dead bodies anyway, so it's not real again, it's all metaphor. But bizarrely, this is the new thing that some, admittedly a very small proportion, of fans of the Overwatch League are really angry about, because they actually consider it some form of sexual assault to, as I say, use the crouch animation.
That was an outlier. To talk about the
It's my favourite one though, Monty.
I mean, they're all sort of outliers. That was very
obviously, yeah, it's only a few people.
But there have been, ever since Overwatch League began and people started tactical crouching, as I prefer to call it, because you never know when the headshots are coming in, right?
Yeah.
Ever since people started doing that, people have found ways to get mad about it. And and saying it's disrespectful or unprofessional. Yeah. I just don't even remotely understand why that's the case, because it's so even, like, when we say teabagging, it doesn't bring into mind like putting your balls in someone's face or your genitals in someone's face. It's like so far removed from that, because it happened that idea happened so long ago that it's mostly just about like
Banter.
celebrating a play or bantering or anything like that. I feel like the actual action has become so disconnected from the reality of where it started, right?
Like if anyone ever played Halo, literally
Oh, it was done in all
everyone was
FPS
doing
games. Yeah, this was for a long time that people did this as well. And to be fair, obviously, most of the people who used to play FPS games were like 15-year-old American boys, so it's also not exactly bizarre that it exists, is it? But here's the question, Monty. When things like that come up, do you actually give them any credence? Is there any point to it?
No, I mean, I don't really, because I've never heard anybody on the Overwatch League side say anything about it, that they think it's inappropriate or they were thinking about stopping it in any way. I'm not a player, so maybe they've told players things, but I really doubt it, considering there's like a teabag spray in the game and Ana has like an emote where she's like making tea, you know? So it seems like they pretty much embraced it and are going to ignore it, which I think is for the best. In fact, I think there should be more of this trash talk in the game.
Wait a minute, Monty. Isn't Ana... Oh, I mean, I'm in the Overwatch League, I'm probably about to just literally say some hate speech. Isn't Ana a female character, Monty?
Yeah, yes,
now,
right.
in that case, women can teabag as well.
Of course they can.
Just a metaphor, isn't it? So, you know. Also, it's equal opportunity. You know, anyone can. That's one of the great things. In fact, in real life, there's people who will never be able to teabag someone. Now, in a video game, this is what I love about esports. It's the great equalizer. Everyone can teabag. See, we're giving it to every type of person. This is true unity and equality.
Fantastic equality.
It's mostly the Tracer players that teabag too.
Yeah, I think it's like
Exactly.
the easiest here to teabag, because like say you're playing McCree, you're not just gonna walk across the map and go teabag someone. It's like it just doesn't make sense.
I know at the World Cup we were allowed to teabag because I did a little bit of teabagging in some of the matches during the last World Cup.
Scandalous revelation there.
And people got mad at the World Cup too. I don't understand why they think it's such a bad thing. It's just a form of celebration of your skill or dominance over another person. And I think it's even funnier that people are making like NFL references when last year the NFL actually rolled back on a lot of their celebration rules. So in the NFL, you used to not be able to celebrate as a team, which was like the stupidest thing ever. So they were just like, okay, this is actually dumb. So they let the players celebrate as a team. And the players were coming up with all these like skits and stuff that they were doing in the end zone. It was absolutely fantastic. And some of my favorite moments in Overwatch League have been these sort of, I guess, more disrespectful fun things. Like, for example, I remember
styling on someone. Yeah.
Shock. One of the things you guys did on the Shock was you were in your attack spawn on Gibraltar and you were playing Seoul and you put their logo on the wall and then you put the red X over it and then you had a Bastion like shoot at it. I thought it was great. It's just
that was my idea.
Creative.
Good job, Dante.
But Dante is secretly toxic.
Yeah.
Because the players generally know when the camera's going to be on them, especially after they've made a big play. And the fans absolutely love more usage of sprays. So I think the team should actually get more creative with the sprays that they use in the game and the way that they do their like spawn room stuff, because the observers notice when they're doing that and they will put the camera on you guys. I think it's really fun. I think there's no problem with it at all. I don't even see it necessarily. I don't see it as bad sportsmanship. It's just style, you know. I fail to see, like, no player has ever come up to me and said that they were like brutally offended that somebody teabagged their body.
Well, it's
like nobody cares.
You can use teabagging to like affect someone in a way, especially in like Tracer versus Tracer, where if you like 1v1 the other Tracer and then teabag them, they feel like they've been like spited. So they might try going for you even more.
Okay, yeah.
It's all about the mind games, right?
And then when they come back, you're like a laser pointer and they're a cat, just all over you, everywhere.
You just bait them into shooting you.
Not bad strategy.
One of the cool spray patterns, I remember watching a New York game, they literally just put like their logo 6 times in like a row, or like three and two.
Okay.
And it looked really cool because like their logo is just like, I don't even know what it is, but it just looks really cool together.
But it does link up together, right?
Yeah, it looks really nice together.
One thing that's actually a downside, though, I've noticed, because I don't think there's any logical area in Overwatch where this would work. But obviously, in CSGO, we have sprays as well. It's actually been a famous part of Counter-Strike for a long time. And believe it or not, it was only maybe a year ago, someone figured out, Monty, a competitive way to use the spray. Because you know in CSGO, when you do the really difficult, like, smoke grenades, where you throw it over the sky into the site, well, you line those up based on different parts of the map. And what someone figured out was, on one of the maps called Overpass, you actually do one of the really important lineups on a sign that has like a line halfway along it. So someone just would run at the beginning of the round, and only every now and then, not all the time, but someone ran and just sprayed so that their spray went over the line, so that, you know, some player, whoever the first person who ever come there, basically would have just been like, right, time to line up this, what the fuck, because that's the thing, there's so many smokes. Yeah, there's so many smokes, you do it off the line, you know, no one really remembers all the perfect spot, you know, you have to go by the lineup, so, but sadly, I can't think of any use like that in Overwatch. I don't think there is.
No, there is. There is a Junkrat trap spray. So what the players use is there's a spray of a Junkrat trap.
Right.
And so now it's become a mind game where you put the Junkrat spray down so people think it's a real trap, and then you hide your trap somewhere else. So one of the common places this is on Anubis. So like on either side of the main Anubis choke, the defending team sometimes will put the trap spray with a mine. So it looks like if you go in there, then you're going to get caught and blown up. But then they'll put the trap on the other side instead into another doorway. So you think you see it there from a distance, and you think that there's a Junkrat trap and mine there, but it's actually somewhere else. So you can make mistakes. And this has become increasingly common. Yeah, it is cool.
Well, traps are sprays. Who knew? Hold. Okay. Right. Let's just start talking about Overwatch, shall we? So we'll do the usual thing, Monty, where we do a potentially awkward and entirely unenlightening interview with the players about their teams, in which every now and then, I'd say 10% of the time, you get some really great info, some great insight. Sometimes hydration says a word or two, you know, and not a few words, literally. So you never know which way it's going to go, Monty. But all I know is, since now you sometimes book the guests, I don't feel as bad when it goes badly now. So I don't know why that is. That's selfishness on my part. Right. Here's the first thing I'd like to know. So Dante, in your team, there's been a really weird dynamic, because obviously the whole time people knew, well, when they're of age, Sinatra, Super will come into the team. So on one hand, I feel like people gave Shock kind of like a lot of leeway, the benefit of the doubt when you lost games, because they were like, okay, well, you know, they're waiting for these guys to come. These guys are very highly touted young players. So even though you were losing, was it like did you take that at face value? Was it like crushing? Did you kind of know like we're going to get sort of reinforcements coming soon at some point in time? What was the spirit like inside Shock when this was going on?
I wouldn't really say it was like that, because the beginning of the season games are really important, and we didn't get Sinatra to like stage 3 in Super. Yes. Like they could play like Super, or Sinatra played the last 2 games or something of stage 2. So it was like, it's really bad, because like it's your overall standings of the season to get overall playoffs, and we like dug ourselves a really big hole. So every loss mattered, and there were a lot of games that we shouldn't have lost. Even with Sinatra, there were some games we still like shouldn't have lost, but we did. And it's really bad for us, because it's just like if they could have played from the start, it could have been way different. And another bad thing about it was Super and Sinatra weren't practicing the whole time. So like in the like 3 months or whatever, 4 months, 5 months of us practicing, Super and Sinatra weren't getting much practice at all. So they couldn't improve as much as the team. So
what do you think, Monty?
I mean, that's always going to be a problem with these bench players when you don't have a 12-player roster. So I think that sucks. But I think a lot of people were really, I think that at the start of the season, one of the interesting things about you as a player is that people thought, oh, well, you know, Dante will play until Sinatra comes in. But you honestly got so good and improved so much. I think you're one of the most improved players that we've seen in Overwatch League. And not only that, but you've carved out a niche for yourself as probably the best Sombra player in the league. So what was the process like for you? Because you knew that this was coming, and yet by the time that Sinatra was actually made available, you found a way to be a very valuable member of this team from a DPS perspective, and you offer something very different than Sinatra does. Was that intentional from you to try and carve out your own space?
Well, we didn't really play Sombra at all, or stage 1 she was just really bad because Mercy it was too good and Sombra didn't really have a spot. But then stage 2 we got our new coach Junkbuck, and he wanted us to play Sombra more because like he noticed that I was a pretty good Sombra, and we started playing more stage 2, and then like she was okay at the time. Like she got the ult charge from health packs, which was really good, but she got another buff, and then we started playing her more. We just try to find ways to play her because on certain maps she can be really strong. Like talking about me like making it a niche as a player, I didn't really like try to. I don't know. Like Sombra just started working really well with our team, so
Dante
yeah, we just started playing more. Yeah, that's a fun hero.
I mean, you like Sombra too. In fact, obviously we've seen a lot more Sombra since the changes, but the Gladiators and the Shock were probably playing Sombra more than any other team during stage 2 before the changes happened. Yeah. You guys each had a lot of like unique Sombra strats. So what do you feel that Sombra brings to your team? Why do you guys like using her so much? Because both of you are Sombra players.
One of the reasons I really like Sombra is because like she's pretty self-reliant in a way. You can just do whatever you want with the translocator and stealth and kind of just set things up yourself. So you feel like you have a lot more control when you play Sombra, especially with the new hack and how fast it is. If you're able to just like get behind a tank that's not like expecting it and just hack them real quick, they're pretty much dead. And the hardest part about Sombra is probably just like managing your EMP and making sure you know the enemy's ults. But if you're able to like play around the enemy's ults correctly, you can like control the game completely by yourself. So like if you bait out a Transcendence, you can just EMP tanks and the tanks can't do anything. Or if you know the Zen doesn't have ult, you just EMP the Zen and he doesn't have ult. So it's mostly about like just getting our teams to like play around the Sombra correctly and making sure they know how to do that slow play style, the fast play style with Sombra. And yeah, after the health pack change, it was really about like playing the slow style a lot more because you can just like farm and wait for EMP. You really had to like wait for your Sombra to get those hacks off and make sure nothing bad happens before them.
Yeah, I think like the most important thing with her is communication. Like if you're just constantly communicating your game plan, then it's like super strong. Because if your team knows that you're gonna hack a tank, then it's like the tank just insta dies. You hack D.Va, and then even just your D.Va shifting on her, it can like one hit her, which is pretty crazy. Another thing is like what Surefour was talking about. When you know the other team's ults, it's like that's the most important thing with your EMP, because say it's a map like Blizzworld 2nd, where the point's really hard to cap. If you can EMP their tanks that both have ult, then that's really good because they can't use them to stall, and then that makes the point really easy to cap.
Okay. Monty, sorry, go ahead.
I think teams have gotten a lot better at playing around the Sombra, though.
Okay. In what way?
Especially the tank players. I think before Sombra was really popular, they're kind of just like doing their standard game plan of like waiting around corners and like waiting for their chance to like dive. So a lot of the times you could just unstealth and hack them before they even like realize what's happening. But nowadays a lot of them are like kind of like spy checking in TF2 where they're like constantly turning around and trying to make sure things happen.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
And especially against Sombra nowadays, the Winstons will actually just like instantly jump at the Sombra once they see him to force the translocate, or even use a bubble to stop themselves from getting hacked. And I think a lot of it when you're playing against Sombra is the D.Va's job to like constantly pepper around because she has infinite ammo. So she just
and the spread is like crazy, right?
As soon as she hears like an unstealth, she's just like
just 360ing, trying to get one pellet to stop the hack from happening. It has been interesting because I touched on this earlier in the season, but right after, because this is stage 3, and right after the Sombra changes came through, one of the things that I noticed was that tanks like your teammate Fissure that often go in alone on Primal Rage, and Muma as well. So they typically use their Primal Rage by themselves. They'll go out, try and dive the back line, push people back. The problem is that when they're playing against the Sombra, they primal and then they jump in the back line. They literally just can't stop themselves from being hacked because they're melee range and they're just standing there. So a lot of teams that I've noticed have had to change how they use the Primal Rage. Not every team used it in that way, but the Gladiators and the Outlaws specifically did that quite frequently. And so when now the Winston can't really go in alone anymore if there's a Sombra on the other team, you really do have to have the D.Va there trying to prevent any hacks from occurring. So
yeah,
it is interesting that has become sort of the diva's job in a lot of these Sombra against these Sombra compositions, rather, is just to like land one pellet on her to reset her hack cooldown.
one thing I noticed is that all the Korean teams were like in the beginning, they were all a lot better at dealing with Sombra than the NA teams, just because they had the experience from Apex. So like playing against them in scrims and stuff was always harder, just they naturally had better positioning and stuff against Sombra. But then like all the other NA teams, it'd be like really easy to get free hacks and stuff because they just haven't played against it. But the Korean teams like played Apex for a while, and Sombra was meta for a while on that.
Sure.
So do you guys think that now that we're later in this stage, I think we're seeing less Sombra again? Is this just a symptom of people getting used to it, like you're saying, that has made it less effective?
Yeah, it's more so just people knowing how to play against it and like having the game knowledge rather than her being like really strong.
Yeah.
Since obviously Monty bigged you up, Dante, and people have obviously praised your Sombra a lot, who do you think, aside from you, like who is the best Sombra you've played against?
I would say there's like some pretty good Sombras. Like I think Surefour, he's probably the best Western Sombra, maybe Tavik.
There we go. Bit of a softball there, I guess, but okay.
I think those are the two. Well, not many Western players play her.
Sure.
Or I don't think many Western players are good with her. But like Surefour and Tavik. Yeah.
Hydration's pretty fucking good now too.
Yeah, Hydration's good too.
His Oasis maps recently have been excellent.
Yeah, and the Korean players. Oh, you can talk. Sorry. Okay, well, I think the Korean players that are really good at her. Well, Rascal was like probably the best Korean player at her.
R.I.P.
Yeah, R.I.P. And then I think Fleta is really good, even though you don't really see him play it much. But I've seen him play it a few games, like just when they were speccing him. It looked like he knew how to be efficient with his cooldowns. And that's like one of the most important things. I think just like your EMPs and being efficient with your cooldowns so you can build it fast. Those are the two most important things. And he looked like he knew how to play her well, so.
Yeah, no, that Fleta is quite an up-and-coming player. One day he'll probably just be in all the matches. You know, when he gets off the bench. I'm looking forward to when he becomes a top pro, Monty.
Me too, aren't we all?
It's like so every time, yeah. Oh, go on.
You were going to say something about Hydration or Oasis, your fifth.
Yes, what were you going to say there, Surefour?
After like Sombra, and we've played against the Shock a lot, and we're having some struggles with playing Sombra a bit. I wasn't going to be the only Sombra player, so the coaches actually just told Hydration to play Sombra a lot more.
Right.
And I think like Hydration's like grinds rank a lot, and he kind of just grinded Sombra a lot and got a lot better at it pretty quick.
Yeah, I think like he's a really, really smart player, and that's like what brings him. Like, I think Sombra is just a really like it's not much mechanical skill; it's like a lot of brain, and I think that's why he's really good at her.
Must help having two players on one team that can play it at any point in time, then, right?
Yeah, Architect can play Sombra well too, so that's good for us as well.
Okay, right. What about this then? Surefour, explain to me the storyline of how the LA Gladiators got good, because the problem is from the outside, people literally think you just added Fisher and then started winning loads of games and then yada yada yada. We're here. So what actually happened? Obviously it was a team that was having some issues in the first stage, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just having clear plans and like things you can do and like decisions. I think like in the first stage, since we were a new team, the coaches went through the route of like we played dive a lot because dive is like the quickest way to just get teamwork and like coordination down packed. So our core values have always been like learning teamwork and like communication and keeping those things strong before we go into like strategy and all those other things. So stage one was a lot of that. And then we brought in Fissure because we thought we needed a main tank that had like more decision making on their own. Because I think sometimes with Remix, he wouldn't have like a clear plan. And like as a main tank, you're like the main force that kind of like makes something happen. Like you're the one that has to create space for everything. And if your main tank isn't like making a plan or like making moves, you kind of just get like stuck. So I think we always had like the pieces of the puzzles kind of there, but Fissure kind of just like completed it in a way where now we have someone that's making decisions. And Fissure isn't the only one that makes game plans for us. He makes a lot of them, but it's always been in Overwatch is kind of game where it's like if you have an ultimate, you kind of make your plan with that ultimate. But other than that, it's kind of like the general game plans, like we're gonna go move here and dive this or pressure here. Fissure brings a lot of that, and it helps us just like do stuff instead of just standing still and not moving. So after we had that, we were able to just work on teamwork more and work on more plans. And I think we always had the mechanical skill from our like support line and DPS line. So Fissure just brought that more like concrete plan making kind of stuff that really helped us just like move.
Well, it also helps that not only is he a shot caller in a way, but he also is a massive individual playmaker. So it's not like he's only bringing, we should go in. We have these ults, they have these ults. Okay, this is our plan. It's like he's gonna do that, and then he's gonna just like randomly kill 2 people he shouldn't kill anyway, or be hyper efficient with a primal rage. So like he's a pretty fucking valuable player in my book. In my book, that's like top tier MVP level. Like that is a massive trade.
The best Winston ults in the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes you don't even know that he's jumping in primal raging and he just kills 3 people by himself. Like he gets like 2 or 3 kills every primal rage if there's not like a Sombra. It's actually insane.
Very Leroy Jenkins-esque in his play, Monty.
except he lives. So.
Exactly, yes. I guess I was wrong with it. Yeah.
He
doesn't throw the whole game.
Instead of inviting all the aggro that kills his team, he just kills them and wins the game. I feel like if Leroy Jenkins was good. But I honestly, the play you guys had, or he had the other week against the Valiant, where he was like off the map juggling Custa and agilities and killed them both, was one of the single best Winston plays I have ever seen. I was sitting in the caster room upstairs in the studio, and I literally just yelled "Holy shit" when that happened. But yeah, I think like he is just such an outstanding performer, and and it also seems like everyone else has stepped up. I think it was an interview. Wasn't Fissure talking about you, Surefour, about helping you improve on Widowmaker, at least like saying you needed to get better at Widowmaker? Can you expand on that, what happened in that situation?
Well, I won't go into exactly how it occurred, but
okay.
me getting better at Widowmaker wasn't a result of what he said or anything. It was kind of like he just said something. Like Fissure's the kind of guy, it's like a double-edged sword sometimes, where he just speaks what's on his mind. So when he has positive thoughts, he'll just say them, but as well as when he has negative thoughts, he'll just say them. But
I see.
He one day just said, I can't really say how he said it or when he said it.
That's fine.
It's better if you
don't want him to get suspended. Exactly. Yeah.
I'm not the kind of person that like says that kind of stuff.
You're not on the Dallas Fuel.
Yeah, I'm very non-drama. There are some things I wish I could say, but I'm like, I probably just shouldn't say these kind of things. But me getting better at Widowmaker was because like the maps that came of stage 3 were like, and kind of at the end of stage 2 were really Widow reliant, and Asher's mostly on Tracer, so they're like, hey, just grind Widow more, and I was like, all right. I just grinded Widow more, and I think I'm
lo and behold, you become one of the best Widows in the league.
I think I can still get a lot better because I just started in a way, but I think I can contest with like any Widow in the league. Though I think the scariest one is probably Pine, but it's not just because of like Pine's skills, because he's like amazing. It's also how like Nexel plays. Like everyone on Nexel is like really scary. So for me as Widowmaker, especially in the match, I'm like, God damn it, I have to deal with Pine, but I also have to deal with the rest of the team because I feel like I'm on a timer where if I could wait too long to do something, someone on my team's gonna die. So sometimes
and you also have to watch out for like Pine and then Jonak at another angle while you're scoped trying to get Pine.
So like I'm like this, like how I said in like one of my YouTube videos is like Widow versus Widow is like a mind game, and like thinking about how the other Widow is going to do something or waiting until you know where they are. So half the time I'm like, all right, I think he's going to come out here, but then like Pine just waits until like I shoot or he knows where I am, but I'm like, shit, I don't want to wait for Pine forever, so I want to take some shots on the tanks or something. And then as soon as I'm like shooting the tanks, he just like hooks shots out of nowhere, and I'm like dead. So like, it was really hard playing Widow against Nexel because like they seem to play around their Widow so well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Baby was telling me that like they're insane at LOSing. Like they don't give you any free shots at all.
They don't let you shoot anything.
Yeah. He's saying that like that was one of the times we've played them and Bebe was playing. I think stage 2. He said like he literally couldn't shoot one person if he wanted to, and then like the moment he stepped past like the boundary, they just insta killed him. So they're really smart when it comes to shutting down Widow.
But that's one of the things I liked with the Gladiators for me as a player, where especially in Cloud9, since I think my versatility was like a blessing and a curse in a way, where I was like the band-aid for problems, where it's like
you were the crutch.
Yeah, they're like, we need this right here, so we'll put you right here. And then like the next week they're like, all right, I need to play you need to play this now. So I was always swapping around heroes, and I always had like the baseline mechanics and game knowledge to play like every hero, but I was never able to like expand upon them fully. But in the Overwatch League, since we have like 4 different DPS, I can kind of get put in this position where they're like, all right, we just need you to play this now, so just grind this for right now, and then you're going to be playing this. So I'm able to like zone my knowledge a lot more in certain heroes. And I think if I'm able to do that, I can become like a top player in like any hero. And my Widow kind of just came to this point because I'm able to spend a lot more time on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you see that video, by the way, that someone put on Twitter? I think it was today, where they had Pine and he was playing that knife game, except he was using a pen, obviously. Like, it'd be a bit more outrageous if he was using a real knife, you know, like a fucking Crocodile Dundee or something. But yeah, he was doing that game, the one people nicknamed Bishop, because it famously occurs in that scene in Aliens, you know, where the robot does that. Except obviously that Bishop didn't get cut. So, you know, shout out to your old coach there. I don't know why I'm firing shots at people who aren't even on the show. I just, you know, hope you get employment soon. I don't know why, it's a bit harsh.
Wow,
that's the thing, Monty.
Slid that one
this
right
shows, yeah, exactly. This show's about us going harsher.
Going harsher.
Exactly. Right. So,
but that was really impressive clip. That
how fast he went was ridiculous, wasn't it?
Because I started to watch that, and obviously, like I've seen people do that before, and I was like, he's probably not going to be that fast, but he is.
He's
fast. Yeah, he's fast. I was like, wow, he has some impressive hand-eye coordination, which comes as no surprise, I suppose.
Plus, that does look a bit intimidating if you have to play against him and he's just doing it. Because it was like the robot, he was just going super fast through. Like, what are you doing? I just like the way his teammate, I forget who it was, the one who sat next to him, his teammate, yeah, that's right, starts just like backing away when he's doing it. Like, he's actually legit scared. He was good. Yeah, it's only like a 20-second clip or something. If everyone goes on my Twitter timeline, it'll be on there somewhere. So obviously, that'll only work for people watching the show live, since I do tweet 1,000 things. So don't even try that otherwise. So actually, what about this then? So Surefour, is it known yet when Void will actually be able to play in the team? Like, is he getting his visa or something still? What's going on with that?
Yeah, his visa's still getting worked on. So as soon as he gets that, we'll probably start playing with him more.
And what about... obviously, you guys got Silk Thread, and we've seen him a few times. Not a ton, but sometimes. What's the story with that? Because obviously, at one point in time, he just disappeared from the Valiant, and then it even looked like, I think he even made some statement at one point saying like he didn't think he would play Overwatch anymore at all. So how did he wind up on Gladiators?
We tried out him and about like 2 other people. And I think we were just looking for a bit more versatility in a way. So I could focus on hit scan a lot more, and if we had any other patches he needed, he could just kind of fill in. So I think like we're kind of like having a lot of specialists in a way, but having enough versatility where if the specialization doesn't work, we can still like switch around in a way.
Okay.
Because he started this stage playing for you guys, like immediately right off the bat. He was out. He was, you know, part of the loss to the shock that you guys played in the first day of competition, and then now he's gone. Like, we really haven't seen him outside of the first couple of weeks of this stage. It's been basically you and Asher, and then and Hydration sometimes. Although the map pool is generally better for you and Asher, which is why I understand why you're doing this. You want the Tracer Widow combination in a lot of the maps in this pool, and it's only in times like Anubis or Blizzard World or something like that you might see, or Oasis, that we might see Hydration coming into play. But there isn't right now. There isn't a spot for Silk Thread, or is he still adapting to the team environment?
I think it's mostly like coaching decision on who's playing what, but a lot of it is partly because like every map you need like a Widow, and of course you need a Tracer because it's Tracer. So that's why there's just a lot of me and Asher right now. And I think it's like some maps or Blizzard World where it's like not Widow, but like you can still have Widow on second, so that's why I play Tracer there, because the Widow is so important, and then we need the Junkrat, so we have hydration. I think if we have like a lot more Genji maps, you'll see Silk Thread a lot more, but right now it's mostly just Widow Tracer, so...
Do you enjoy Blizzard World?
Second point is...
But that's
probably
getting
the hardest. Yeah. Well, I think even without that, it's still really hard because it seems like the only thing that's good for like breaking and defending is like Widow, because the sight line is so long and there's not like clear flanks. It's like the tanks can just sit on like the siege tank and just like block all 3 areas. And if you're attacking and you get your Widow on the siege tank, she literally sees the whole map.
Yeah.
So it's like, you can play Genji, but if they have a Widow, she always knows where you are. You can play Sombra, but like there's no good ways for you to get high ground. There's literally like 1 ramp to get up there, or like the halls, but that's like super telegraphed.
Mm-hmm.
So like the only good thing is like Widow. It's kind of like Ruins, where it's like you can play other stuff, but if there's a Widow in the game, it's like you're just at a disadvantage.
Yeah. I think Widow and Sombra are the best DPS in that point, like besides Tracer, because Tracer just get everywhere. But I think Sombra is pretty strong on offense because you can just disable their ults. Like, say they have 2 tank ults and you EMP them on cart, then they can't stall and you can cap the point really easily. But Widow's also just as strong because if you get her into that god spot, then she's just free shooting on cart, and really good Widows will just hit all headshots. So. Yeah,
and you can cover the spawn door. You can cover the spawn door.
You can literally watch the spawn door as well. Yeah, so I think both are really, really strong for that point.
But the thing about, I think that just having watched so much Blizzard World at this point in time, it does seem like a lot of the times where the cart stalls out is where it would end in the changed second point to Blizzard World. So that gives me some hope. Mm-hmm. And even though I don't like the second point very much, I do find the first point really interesting with how many flank routes there are and how Junkrat and Widow can reposition around the point. And I really like the third point, actually, because it's quite unique in terms of architecture for any Overwatch point. And I think that it rewards a lot of different compositions. It reminds me in some ways of like Eichenwald point C, where you'll see a lot of comp changes right at the end of the map, which I really enjoy because one of the things I like the most about Overwatch is seeing how teams like adapt as a match goes on. Mm-hmm. So I wish we got to see more of point C on Blizzard World, because I do actually like that one.
That's an unfortunate thing, I think, because like point A, you can pretty much run anything in a way. You see a lot of people run like Tracer Sombra, then there's like Junkrat Widows, there's Tracer Widows.
Junkrat Tracer as well.
Yeah, sometimes people run tank comps. Yeah, you can run like anything, but then second point hits and it's like, you can only run like this certain thing or else you're just going to have a really fucking hard time. And I think like most of the matches, like people get full held or finish on like second of Blizzard World. We haven't seen third that much.
No, we have not.
Yeah. So
I hope we'll see it more. I mean, we can complain about this, but we can also complain about things like Route 66, where no one ever plays anything else on the first 2 points besides Tracer Widow either. Ever since the Sombra changes to the health pack charge, where we don't see Sombra on defense point A. So both on attack and defense, A and B, and Route 66, just Widow Tracer every time. So obviously Widow is really good. And having watched a lot of the like contenders playoffs, especially in Korea, we're actually seeing a lot less Widow than we do in the Overwatch League. So as both of you guys, as DPS players, how much of the Widowmaker do you think is a factor of the servers that we use in Overwatch League, the higher tick servers that the contenders regions don't have access to? Do you think that's affecting the strategy coming off the ladder and coming off previously practicing in contenders teams or in Apex? Do you feel like the servers have made a massive difference for you coming over to Owl?
I think the servers make a massive difference for like anything you play. I think the biggest notice is like Zarya. Zarya just feels like so much better on LAN client. But one of the problems with like ping with Widow is if you have high ping, you kind of have to lead your shots.
Sure.
Whereas in LAN, you just have to point and click right at them. So there's less variability.
Okay.
I think the contenders teams they're like Widow's like a really really slow playstyle, and I think the contenders teams like they like to go for like fast paced stuff. Like the Korean contenders meta was like Sombra Tracer, Morio, Lucio. Like that was literally every map, which is it's like only meta on Koth for Overwatch League, and then like the NA contenders teams they're running like a bit of everything, but they didn't really run that much Widow because like I just don't think the slow game really benefits them that much. But the Overwatch League teams, like, if the other team's playing a slow game and you're trying to play a fast game, like, normally it doesn't work out too well. So you have to play, like, the slow game in return. Like, for an example, Volskaya first, if they're playing Widow on defense and you're trying to run Tracer Genji, it's really, really difficult to play the fast game against it because they can just out-rotate you all the time.
And I think a lot of it is in the Overwatch League, there's so much coaching. I don't know how much coaching goes into, like, contenders, but people like if someone plays something that's really strong against you in Overwatch League, you really go into analyzing it and trying yourself and seeing why it works and why it doesn't work. And that's why a lot of the time in the Overwatch League people start playing the same comps against the same comps, because everyone just figures out like this is literally the best thing on this point to play. And then like if a Widow is really strong, the best counter to a Widow is another Widow, because Widow kind of just like whether she's good or not changes how people play, because if you make like one misstep you get shot in the head and then your push is over. So the only thing to make another Widow just not free shoot is just the pressure of another Widow existing, because then they just have to play differently inherently. But especially in like the old times of tournaments for Overwatch, especially before the Overwatch League, I think a lot of people kind of just winged it. And with Widow, you don't really wing it. You have like set plans of playing around the Widow and making sure people don't get to the Widow. So I can't really say for contenders teams, but in the Overwatch League, Widow is like really team reliant, and it's about giving your Widow as much space as possible to make the enemy team's life a living hell.
Yeah.
And let's talk about Widow's damage for a second. Bren was bringing this up to me the other day, but do you guys know the exact damage for a headshot, fully charged Widowmaker damage boosted headshot? It's over like 400, isn't it?
It's a lot. I don't play Widow.
Damage boosted.
You can get
damage boosted
to like 10%.
Yeah. Yes, so that would be over 400 damage.
Yeah, like you one hit Zarya, I think. Don't you?
I mean that's ridiculous.
Is that overpowered then? Because, for example, the comparison I would give would be, I know everyone's going to say like the AWP from Counter-Strike, but being as this is a game where you fire all the time, it's not really like Counter-Strike in that sense. In Quake, obviously, you had the railgun, and famously in the old versions of Quake, that basically was a one-hit kill, unless the person had armor. But in later versions, they tuned it down. And when they first tuned it down, many people, including myself, thought, like, this might ruin the game, you know. If you have to hit people 2 or 3 times in a row, it might make it so that, you know, it's not that good a gun. But actually, somehow people did just adapt around it, you know. And I think in the end, it probably ended up being better because, you know, as people's aims get better and better in games over the years, the problem is it would have become super overpowered that the people who had amazing, like, hand-eye coordination would have just been able to dominate the game. So do you think they should tune it down a bit?
The problem is like for the balance, I don't know how you tune it down for the non-professional game, because remember, part of this is the tick rate of the servers, right? So you're in a weird situation where the pro players are playing in a different environment, and also they're so fucking good that it makes it very difficult to balance, because it has to be balanced around the casual game. And obviously that's pretty brutal in this instance. And it's like they're saying, one of the reasons why Widow is good is when you have a whole team coordinating around holding certain angles, she becomes even more strong. Right. Or you know how people approach a point, and you're in a position to cut off certain chokes with your tanks, and make one more attractive. That attractive angle then has a Widowmaker, where as soon as you step around the corner, you just get headshot.
Yes.
So
I think it's like the same thing as Tracer. It's like she's not good, like anywhere below Masters, I'd say. She's pretty bad, but like the pro players, they just like, it's literally just the best hero in the game, just because there's like the skill cap is just so high. And it's kind of the same with Sombra. Like Sombra's really bad at like anywhere below a GM level. Like when you get to like the top players that know how to play her, like it's just another really strong hero. So
plus, I guess to be honest, it's not like anyone can just hard carry the whole game just by being a good Widowmaker. Shout out Sire player. I did the appropriate pause there as I deadpanned it, Monty. Don't worry.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, so I did the math. It's 390 damage for a
390.
damage boosted headshot because 30% damage, but it's 120 for the shot. Then it's 2.5 times because of Widowmaker's extra crit for a headshot, and then it's another 30%, so it's 390. So you can't quite one shot a Zarya, but that's still pretty ridiculous.
Really, really, really close.
And the other thing with like balancing hit scan heroes in this game, it's a problem that happened in a game called Super Monday Night Combat. But
Okay.
Okay.
What is that? Is it an FPS game?
Super Monday Night Combat was a third-person shooter game that I played. It was
Right.
one of the dead games that I played, where not a lot of people played it, but there's a hero called the Gunslinger where
Okay.
you would scope in, but she had a rate of fire buff that at max, like it was basically a third-person shooter MOBA with like actual like bots spawning in lanes, and like you start at level 1 and you level up, but at the max rank for it, you would it would be on a 4-second cooldown, but you had a massive rate of fire buff, and she was basically a close range sniper, and you could just rate of fire and spam people in the head. So when I joined that game, a friend got me in it because they
You just
wanted
did that
me,
all the time.
yeah. So like humble brag, I like
Okay.
single-handedly nerfed that hero because like there weren't like high mechanically skilled players in testing that game yet. And as soon as I joined that, I was like, wow, I can just kill everyone with this rate of fire buff. So then they nerfed her because of that. And it's really hard in a game like Overwatch where you have skills and mechanical aim, because it's one of the reasons like McCree is in this weird position where like he's really freaking strong, but also sucks so much because he can just get dived by tanks. And the hard thing is like you want to balance Widowmaker, but the only thing you can really balance is people's mechanical aim with her, because she's not she's not an ability reliant hero.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of like you don't see that many hit scan heroes, because the only thing you can balance McCree, Soldier, and Widow around is like how people aim with her. And you can't really balance that effectively, especially when there's a bunch of abilities in this game that can counter that at the same time.
You could change the damage. That's about it with hit scan. Like the soldier buff. Like remember when he was really, really bad, and then they buffed his damage, and then he was like played a ton, and then I think like Genji Tracer just took over after that.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
problem.
Yeah.
I
'Cause you
mean,
have to-
this is one of the reasons why I think it's so good that in general they haven't been making a lot of new DPS heroes, because I think that we have enough DPS heroes, and what makes the game more interesting is how those DPS players, like you're saying, how players' mechanical skill has to play around tanks and supports.
Mhm.
That makes the game much more interesting to me.
Okay. Right, so since we were asking Surefour about Void comment, etc., Dante, in your team, obviously we've now seen Architect and Moth play, they're the newer players, and obviously you've got the young guys who came into the squad, Super Sinatra. Sometimes the shock now, it literally isn't the same team at all as the one that we saw in stage 1. What do you think has changed with all these new players coming in? Like, for example, obviously yours was one of the teams that wasn't filled with Koreans, and now you've got Architect. So what's it been like working with him? What's like the integration process been like for you?
Well, our first new pickup was Moth. Not many people, or we got our new coach, Junkbuck, in stage 2, and problem with our team is we need a main support, like a more consistent main support, and Moth, like no one really knew him because he was like from tier 2 contenders, and our coach Junkbuck was on a team with him, so we picked him up, and I think like it was a really, really good pickup because Moth is like such a great teammate, and he just keeps everyone focused really, really well, and that was like the biggest problem with us. So that integration helped us a ton, like internally as a team. And then Architect, since he doesn't know that much English, like the first few days were really, really hard, but he's starting to learn more English, and his hero pool, it helps us so much, because before we had this problem where if we had Baby Bay playing, like say it's like Baby Bay Sinatra, we can't really run Tracer Genji too efficiently because Baby Bay doesn't play Genji. Or say it was like me and Sinatra, we could only play like Tracer Sombra or Tracer Genji because we didn't really like, neither of us really excel in hit scan. But yeah, Architect kind of like fills that gap. He can play like Genji and hit scan, which is something we really, really needed. That way,
which is
unmatched.
it's also the most valuable, I think, combination right now. If you're going to have a Genji player, to have in this map pool in the current meta, to have the flexibility between Genji and Widowmaker or Genji and Tracer, have one player that can do one of those two things is huge.
Yeah. It's
Monty,
really, really
since you obviously did, to some degree, hype up Architect and say that all these teams should be in the Architect lottery trying to get him, what have you made of his actual debut, his time in the Overwatch League so far?
Well, I was really tilted because I was casting his first game, and then they decided to play him on Sombra the entire series, and I was basically like, why the hell are you doing this, Shock? You have Dante. Sombra, as Mr. Dante here alluded to earlier, is very dependent on communication with the team.
Yeah.
Because you have to play around who's hacked, target selection on the hacked player, when the ults are coming in, positioning of everybody. So why the hell would you play a player who can't speak English on Sombra when you have one of, if not the best Sombra player in the league on your team who speaks English? So I was frustrated. And then now, later on, that we're seeing more of Architect on Widowmaker and Genji, I'm really liking it. And obviously he's been doing a very good job on those roles. So
yeah, with I think
I was confused by that decision at first, but.
All right. The story with that was we were really like hard convinced that Sombra was like really, really strong. It's just like meta, but like obviously it isn't. And another plan on that, I think he was playing Sombra and Volskaya. The plan was like if we wanted to swap Widow or like play Widow offense, then we just play Widow offense. But for some reason we didn't practice it that much. So I guess we were just like, oh, we'll just play Sombra Tracer. Like that's what the comms were. It was like, oh, just play Sombra Tracer offense. But like the plan was maybe Widow. Like we just didn't have that much practice, so we didn't want to play it, which was bad for us because they were expecting Sombra, and Architect like he can't play Sombra as well because of the language barrier. So it made it really difficult, that match.
Fair enough. Monty, whenever there's a lot of 3-2 matches, like we said on the last episode, people obviously just say like, oh, everyone's so improved so much and the teams are all so close that, basically just lies. So what I want to ask you was, what do you make of the Gladiators at the moment? Because obviously they've been both the victim and the beneficiary of these 3-2 matches where they've been losing a bunch of them. They've also been winning a few now. What do you make of Gladiators? Where are they at the moment?
I think the Gladiators have really stabilized thanks to having the lineup that they have. I wasn't really sold on Silk Thread at the beginning, but I think part of it has been Surefour showing up on Widowmaker has been a huge difference for them because previously they did not have a strong Widowmaker player, which I think was pretty bad for them overall. And previously in other stages, we've seen Asher play the Widow, and he has not been awesome on it. I think this has opened up a lot of space for them to do work in other areas, and Asher in particular has been showing up. He said, I asked for a stat, which I'm going to get tomorrow, I think, which is like Asher's pulse bomb stick rate right now, because I'm pretty sure it's really, really high, and I want to see what it was before. So that's a stat I'll be pulling up probably on Watchpoint tomorrow if it shows what my eye test shows, which is that he's been really accurate. But part of that has been people have been distracted by you, Surefour, and so it's been a lot easier, I think, for him to get into the back lines to stick that stuff. Obviously, Fissure's been a major improvement. I think that Bishu has gotten better in his individual play because he's probably doing less translating, if I had to guess now, because I've heard your comms at times, and it seems like Fissure's speaking more in English than he did when he first joined the team. Is that correct?
For the most part. And I think Bishu is just getting a lot of help with coaching and stuff like that. And he's just constantly improving and getting better and better.
So actually I think he's been really outstanding recently. And your support line was always good. Yep. And I think one of the things is that Shaz has been popping off recently. I tried to bring a lot of focus onto Shaz for your London match because he was quietly doing extremely well in the London match. He was chunking out their supports so they couldn't get in line of sight to heal their tanks. So they had to fall behind. Like Jester would go in, but Closer would be at 1 HP and had to go out. So their dive was all messed up as a result of it. He was peeling for you on the Widowmaker really well, making sure the Prophet wasn't anywhere close to you when they were trying to disrupt you. So I think he had a really good week. And I'm going to check on this again, but a couple weeks ago, Shaz was third in the league in Zenyatta damage behind Jonak, obviously, and then Bedosian. So, and he was very close to Bedosian. But the other thing that Shaz had was he was much better at trance healing than either Jonak or Badoshan. So in my mind, he may be the most well-rounded Zen player in the league, which
Western
is
Jonak.
Yeah, which is well, it's just that he's not doing as much damage, but he is more focused on healing, which I find interesting. So I think he's maybe more complete in terms of using the Zen kit. But him and Big Goose were always good ever since the start of Overwatch League. And I think that you guys are on a really good trajectory right now. Sometimes I worry about your ult economy, but I think that's Houston is a team though that has very good ult economy and teamwork and less good individual skill. But I think you guys on an individual level, like player by player, are all quite strong, right?
Mm-hmm. Why do you worry about it, Monty? What's concerning you?
Well, it's just because when I was casting, actually, I casted both your games this week. And when I was casting your Houston, the match versus Houston, sometimes like they would just use their ults more efficiently and make it hard for you to find openings. So, but you guys pulled it out in the end. Oasis was pretty dominant from you.
It's weird. Our Route 66 is like all right in scrims, and then in matches, it just feels like I have a Winston and a Tracer on me 24/7, and I just can't do anything. It's like our thing so far has been all right, Volskaya, and then whatever the map is after that, we did pretty good, you know. Widowmaker worked pretty well, and then I feel like at halftime, their coaches are like, "All right, make Surefour's life a living hell on Route 66," and I'm just like, "What the fuck can I do right now?"
It probably doesn't help that Fissure is not a peel-oriented tank. He's a pressure tank, right? And he is going into their backlines no matter what, and he's not going to help you.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of our mercy healing goes into Fissure. So a lot of the time, as long as I survive like a Winston for like half a second or a Tracer one clip, then I'll get mercy healing. But if I don't survive that initial part, I usually die. It's more so like I have to go like, there's someone on me, heal me, and then Goose will come back or Shaz will orb me. So like on Route 66 a lot, I'm kind of like playing by myself like all the time. And Houston Outlaws kind of like exploited that a shit ton because they had Muma and Jake literally just hiding all the time.
Yes, but I also watched you duel Jake, and Jake would miss you with like 3 clips of Tracer ammo. So let's not say like the pressure. Great, because like he would get back to you, and then you would dodge like 3 or 4 clips from him.
It was mostly second point that was the problem because it was mostly Muma and Jake. They would pretty much pigeonhole me into a corner. And as soon as I would want to do something, Linkser would know where I was, and Linkser's a god at Widow versus Widow, so he would just like hook shot once he knew where I was, and I was like pigeonholed and just kill me. So I was like really stuck on second point.
Okay. What is the actual situation with Baby Bear, Dante? Is he just benched now, or what's going on with that?
I'm not really sure because I'm not a coach, but
okay.
Don't you dare ask about IDD.
He's just on holiday, mate. He's having a nice time.
He's one of the disappeared of Overwatch.
He's become the Mendo of this team, yes. Yeah. Well, I actually saw Mendo, Monty. He was on a game show. So he is alive still. He's still alive, still around. You know.
I think like we might be able to integrate him sometimes because his playstyle is like a lot different than Architects, and like maybe some maps that could help us against certain teams. But like a lot of teams figured out how to punish his playstyle really badly. So that was one of the main problems.
Shoot the tank playstyle. He still has the highest damage per 10 minute of any player in Overwatch League. Yeah, because he shoots tanks.
Yeah, but yeah, he would be like really aggro. He'd be like really aggro in their face. Like he's probably like the most aggro player. Always poking, always getting damage. Like they're like the tanks that didn't know how to deal with them. Like those would be really good games for us because they would just get chunked. They wouldn't know what to do. We'd just win because like they wouldn't know what to do. But then the tanks that like knew how to play around them really well, like we would just lose so badly because like we just couldn't do anything. It was so hard to find like any openings because their tanks just outplayed us. But yeah, I think against certain teams we could probably integrate them.
All right. So speaking of tanks, one of the problems that we noticed with the San Francisco Shock from day one was that you guys, when you'd be doing well, right? You'd be defending, you'd be holding a point, and then it would get to overtime, and the attacking team would suddenly just roll over you, even though you had a huge advantage, and you guys look like you were just like panicking and running around like chickens with your heads cut off for no reason, even though you had held this point for 4 minutes already. What has Super helped in terms of your comms? Like, what was going on in those?
What stage was this? Or like
stage 1, stage 2, before Super was part of the team.
Stage 1,
you guys would flip out for no reason.
Yeah. Yes. All right. Yeah, there was like a lot of panic in our team. Like we would always panic. Stage 1, we were like really bad at being aware of like what ults the other team has. We didn't really always have like a game plan. So we were just like relying on like a lot of like just skirmish fights, and like that's why Moth helped us a lot. Like the organization on our team is just a lot better now. But yeah, we were just like a really like skirmish team, and it was really bad because like, well, like basically what like as a DPS duo, my and Bebe shot tanks, but like him alone, it wouldn't really like him just shooting tanks alone wouldn't work. So I would just shoot tanks as well. So like combined, like we could do a lot of damage on their tanks, but like if they're killing our backline, it doesn't mean much. And I think that was one of our big problems in stage 1. Like if I were to work with Nomi more with like killing backline and like those overtime situations, like where we make it a skirmish fight, like we wouldn't have to do that if we just went for backline instead. I think that was a big problem with our team. Like we would just like always go for these skirmish fights and just like, yeah, it was just bad for us.
So if you're crediting Moth with these improvements, then I have a follow-up question for you, which is why did all of these flaws come back in that game that you played against the Shanghai Dragons when Super was sick? You remember that game? You went to the 5th map versus Shanghai. It was
I think we went 3-1.
Oh, 3-1. But you guys, to me, I was also casting that game. It looked like you had reverted to your stage 1 form without Super in the lineup, and everything was just pure chaos again.
Yeah, that's also another thing. Nomi is like a quieter main tank, and like Surefour was talking about earlier with Fisher, like having a game plan is always so important. And Super's another like he's just really vocal, so it helps our team a ton. So yeah, he's always like even if it's like a bad play, it's still better than just like not really doing much. So even like if it's just really bad, it's just way better, and it helps us a ton. Like yeah.
Surefour, obviously your team generally has been doing pretty well, even though a lot of the games are close, like I said. So how did you lose to that team that's like bottom half of the table, the San Francisco Shock, in that first game?
Sombra and our tanks not being used to playing against Sombra and just getting hacked, and then
Dante did completely shut Fisher down in that matchup.
Yeah, that was a good game for us.
He gave you free coaching.
And then as we
but you're pretty good at it now, so
yeah, everyone's used to not getting hacked now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think someone needs to do something clever with that. Like someone needs to figure out something like whatever the solution to like playing against Sombra is needs to be called like, you know, like Norton or something like that. What McAfee? Go one of these. That has to be like the casting tagline, I think.
Well, I mean, we could use a Vast, but we never see him in the Overwatch League, so I don't think we're gonna go with that anti.
That's the problem, Monty. Avast was around a few years ago. You know, some people were using it. Nowadays, you know, people have moved on. You know, you don't need it anymore. You know. All right, the player. My mistake. Anyway, classic punchline there.
As soon as there's a reason to play Lucio, I think we'll see more of Vast. But right now,
isn't that also a factor of? Isn't that also a factor of why Mercy came back more and why the Lucio went out? Is the increase of Sombra, right?
No, I think it's literally just because
I think it's Widow.
It's Widow.
Widow and
it's somewhat Widow, but I'm pretty sure it's just because like. Even though there's so much nerf to her res, it's still like a fixed ability.
So,
like someone died,
yes.
Okay, we can still go. Everything's fine.
Yeah, and then her heals are just insane.
Yeah, it's like
damage
point and click. Like you can.
Well, I mean, Thorin's not wrong though, right? The fact that Lucio, like with Sombra, you're clearing off the sound barrier with the EMP, whereas if you get hacked as if you're already ulting as Mercy, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
as much.
I think
you just literally float to the sky and then you're safe.
I'm pretty sure if Mercy didn't have res on her E, like a 30-second, you can just like res someone, you would still see more Lucio. But like res is just still so strong. Like no matter in what case it is, as long as you have the ability to bring someone back alive, it's insane. Like your tank dies and you have the chance to res them, that's another 600 HP you have to go through again. And a lot of, like, it's actually just insane. And, like, it is really good against Widow versus Widow, because even if your Widow gets picked from a mile away, you can res her safely. And it just resets.
Also, alright, so say, like, you're playing Widow, or you're playing Mercy, and a Widow versus Widow, the other team doesn't have a Mercy. Your Widow can literally just hunt the other team's Widow and have, like, if he dies, it's like, oh well, he has another life. It's like literally like a 7v6. And I think a lot of times when you die, like your Winston will like leap back to you and he'll just die like midair. But that like the teams are just good at like dying in a good spot, so your Mercy can still res, or like Matrix the res, or like Diva Bomb at the same time. So like you'll always be getting these like consistent reses off, and I think it's like why Mercy's so strong, because you can just bring someone back for like no cost really.
And it's like you would think that you should definitely stop a res, but like a lot of reses happen mid-fight when there's so much chaos and so much random stuff happening that like Mercy players were like, no, they're looking for the res, but then wait until everyone's like focusing on someone else that's low, and then she'll just like swoop in to get that res in.
Yeah, I also think she synergizes with almost every hero well. Like Widow, she synergizes extremely well. Genji, like damage boosting blade, it's like nano boost, except Mercy's just 10 times better. Yeah, save her. It's like even Sombra, you can damage your Sombra and get EMP so fast. Basically every DPS plays well with Mercy. Fair Mercy.
Right, obviously, if I ask any balance question, like actually, the mechanism you said before is completely right, Surefour. The big problem is what's going to happen in like the casual mode, which is where everyone plays the game. So, for example, if you make Widowmaker even worse, all those people who just miss 1,000 shots are going to be even worse, and then it's going to make it even more toxic as a game. So I have to ask these naive questions. So just for the moment, let's forget the casual part of the game and just look at the competitive side. Should they do something like make it so that when you get rezzed, you come with less health or something like that? You know, should there be some way of tuning it down like that? Does it matter? Is it fine as it is?
I don't think that would really matter, because like if someone got lower health when they were rezzed, they would just back up more.
Okay.
And most of the time when you die, you're in a safe spot, so should they be able to heal it up anyways?
Right, sure.
Well, I mean, but there are other circumstances where I don't think it would hurt, right? Like, I think we have to ask the question, like, okay, let's say, for example, it gave you 200 HP, so you could bring back to full HP most DPS heroes. But you couldn't bring back a Winston, for example, to full health.
Yes.
Because the circumstance you're talking about, if you're dying out of range, if your Zenyatta sniped on your approach, or your Widow sniped on your approach, then you could bring them back to full HP. But and I know obviously now a lot of reses happen during trance, when you're on a point of the tanks. So also that wouldn't necessarily change anything, but it would give you at least some window of time. For example, during trance, if you, for example, somebody was bringing up the Winston and the Winston comes back with 200 HP, there is still a chance that a Widowmaker headshot in the instant that Winston is res could take him out before the healing over time came up from the Transcendence, right? There is still a very small timing window there where there would be more counterplay. And also it would be at least more punishing if there wasn't a trance being used and they had, for example, a good angle to get a res around a wall or something like that, that the Winston, somebody could dive in there and take out a tank before they had a chance.
Or maybe even like lower invulnerability time after you get rezzed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it is like, oh, you got rezzed. I have like this grace period where I can kind of like assess my situation, kind of like decide what I'm going to do.
Go in a safe spot. Yeah.
Yeah. But if there's lower invulnerability time, like you actually get punished if you got rezzed in a bad spot, and people can actually like kill you instantly. But right now it's kind of like you can kind of survive.
Yeah, you get you get like 2 seconds of invulnerability, then you can like jump back or something. You can just like, it's really hard to punish it.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I said, though, obviously we have to separate it from the casual mode, because rezzing people and having them have less health, I could see how that could possibly lead to blame, infighting, toxicity, I believe it's called. When someone just gets instantly Widowmaker shot and they're like, oh, well, he's gone again. So
I do think some of these changes, though, would affect the competitive scene more than the casual scene. Because people are, even if there was less invulnerability, people at lower levels are not going to be coordinated enough to necessarily take advantage of that. So,
from a pro player perspective, I always want it to be balanced around the competitive scene more.
Well, me too, but we don't get what we want, do we? And that's never going to happen, unfortunately.
See, that's the thing. That's a message for people out there who are mad at getting teabagged. You don't always get what you want. You just have to put up with it. Just do better. Don't die. There's the secret. You don't get a teabagged. Don't die. Yeah, problem solved, isn't it? You know, solved that problem for you, haven't I? Or I've solved it. I've got the solution. There should be to res people. You should have to teabag them, but because life actually comes out of that area of women, you see, Monty. That's actually it's thematic in a way, you know. Listen, it's just logical. No, just leave that in the air, leave it out there hanging. Don't address it.
I believe it's not teabagging. I believe it's clam stamping is the technical term.
You are more knowledgeable than I am in this regard, Monty. You know.
I think the other change you could do to res that I remembered, and some people suggested it, is you actually have to like heal their HP back to full when they're dead for them to get rezzed.
Right, so it takes longer or something?
Yeah, instead of like the little cooldown thing. So like for a 200 HP target, you just hold your beam on them for a bit and they're back. But to res a tank full, you kind of have to like commit a lot of resources to it.
And so also, you know, if it gets interrupted, then they have whatever 3 quarters health or something, right?
Teams are getting better at interrupting these, right? Too, by using diva charges or
I think
primal rages.
The big thing to nerf her would be you know how like you can literally like res like completely around a corner, like you can LOS really hard. Maybe just make that like a lot smaller. That way, like
it used to be where like, you literally have to be right beside them.
Yeah, maybe that would be better.
Harsh.
Well, I mean, I think she'll still be meta no matter what, unless like that's changed.
Yeah.
So
it's a hard knock life.
I think Mercy's going to be good no matter what. Like you're saying, because she deletes mistakes. I mean, if you get, as long as Widow's in the game, both on whether you're playing the Widow or not, and you're getting sniped on your approach through a choke point, she saves your team 10 seconds, period. So that adds up over the course of an 8-minute match.
Well, I think if Widowmaker, if Mercy didn't have res, there'd be more counterplay to these Widowmaker comps, and you'd see a lot more Lucio. But like the fact that like the Mercy can just pocket people, especially a Widow, and then even if they do die, can kind of wait till like the chaos ensues and then just re-res her.
Yeah, because a lot of times like the dives are really, really deep. So when you get that kill, it's like, okay, you have to back off now, or else you're just gonna die. You need to resustain, and then that just opens like a window where you can res. So a lot of times the dives are just way too deep, and then the res is just free.
And like before Mercy got the changes, Widow has always been the same. Like Widow's always been this strong, but you didn't see her too much before. And like stage 1 on all these maps. Well, no, stage 1 was like complete. Okay, that was like 3 reses, so that was like different. You could play like whatever you want. You could play literally whatever you wanted. But before that, I think like Lucio helps a lot against Widow because you can just speed boost and like deny a lot of her LOS and just get right on top of her. But Mercy sustain and res just kind of like takes away that initiative that Lucio has.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is a bummer. So speaking of supports that may have a great effect on the meta, I know you guys probably haven't practiced a lot because you're still on this patch, but what are your thoughts currently on Brigitta that's coming out? Because I had a chance I saw her before she was announced, and I was very concerned about the power of her ultimate and the amount.
Is that really the way that name's pronounced? It's not just Bridget.
Well,
no, Brigitta.
I suspect a few contender scrims, and like what a lot of teams do, they'll just use Brigitte on cooldown. Like say you have it like before a fight even starts, like you're going into Hanamur a second, they'll just pop it like outside the gate, like get their armor for 10 seconds, and then just go in with the armor.
It's 150 armor, which on
which is
Zarya and stuff is crazy.
And
when you have shield too.
Armor that never goes away.
Yes, that is. I was very worried about
because like I think her armor should go on top of shields. I think that'd be like if she's broken, I think that's the best solution because when you have a Zen that has like how much armor is it? 150 or 125? Yeah. So you have a 350 HP Zen, and then the shields on top, which will almost get like if your Mercy's just pocketing the Zen, he won't lose the shields. And like worst comes to worst, he does lose the shields. Then he has like 150 armor. I think he has 50 health after.
Then you add a Torbjorn into the mix.
Even more. But yeah, it just makes it really, really hard to kill heroes like Zen, and Zen Mercy will probably be meta with it. I'm expecting
should be fun seeing the New York Excelsior play with that.
Oh yeah, 400 HP Jonak just front lining.
The other thing is Tracer players are going to be scared 24/7 if there's a Brigitta in the game, because like you get hit by her shield bash once and you're just dead, and it's on a 4-second cooldown.
I have to say those two abilities worry me, really worry me. But you guys haven't had scrims yourselves. Do you think that this is going to be as bad as, say... And by the way, we have no guarantee, because she's going to be coming in Stage 4. We know that. She may also be nerfed before she hits Overwatch League. Like, we don't know what the balance patch is going to be.
Shield bash range.
Sure.
So that's one good thing.
Yeah, and they may, for all we know, they're going to nerf her again before this competitive season starts. So that could be a thing. We've got a couple weeks now to do that. I do hope somewhat that they do tone her down a bit. But do you guys think it's going to be as bad as, say, Stage 1 Mercy, or do you think this is going to have more counterplay to it?
I don't think it'll be as bad as Stage 1 Mercy, because you can still run like Junkrat and Pharah, and she can't really do much against that. But at the same time, if she stays the way she is, I'm pretty sure you're going to see like triple support comps with her, and like a DPS player playing Brigitta, because Zen is pretty much a DPS hero. You could run Lucio or Mercy, because Mercy just has insane healing.
I like Mercy.
Lucio, you have insane AoE healing. But the fact that Brigitta can completely stop like Tracer or Genji, you can run her in a DPS plot and be like really effective, because most of her healing is from frontlining anyways. So you'll just be frontlining by yourself and just like hitting stuff and potentially insta-giving people. It's like you're gonna play Brigitte as like a really slow, annoying comp.
Yeah, I think it's really, really hard to tell what it'll be like right now, because like obviously we haven't played, and like the first week of Overwatch League, it looked like Sombra was really, really dominant, and like people just figured it out in like a week and a half, 2 weeks. So I think it just depends on how fast people can figure out counterplay.
Yeah. Well, and like you're saying, she has like Surefour saying, she has no real defense against heroes with a lot of verticality to them, like Junkrat, and so in theory, and she has no mobility either, really.
Yeah.
So there is definitely counterplay available. I guess my concern is what happens when she gets her ultimate and she just sits on the point with the entire team. Does it even matter if she's getting shot by Junkrat when she's giving 30 armor per second up to 150 armor? You have to contest her on the point, and do you just get a bunch of control percent for free as a result of that?
I think there's just always gonna be counterplay. Like I think Barrage and Junkrat are two really good counters, because like it's just high burst damage. The armor doesn't matter. It's kind of like it's like
armor over time doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If they already have 150 armor, it definitely does matter.
Well, I think like Zarya with grabs could be good.
Zarya would be really good against Brigitta.
But like, say like there's a Zen with like 400 HP or whatever. Say you used higher, I think it's still a pretty easy kill against the Zen. Just as long as you get like close enough. Which I mean, it's gonna be hard because teams are gonna like peel for the tire and stuff. But I think it's a lot better than trying to like blade a Zen that's getting pocketed with 400 armor. So I think Junkrat will be really strong. Like anything with burst damage that ignores armor and has good ults against her, I think will be good.
I think it'll turn into a very spammy stage.
Yeah.
Because people would be forced to play like Junkrat Pharah to counter Brigitta. But if people want to counter the Junkrat Pharah, you can't really run dive. You can kind of run hit scan, but Junkrat's still good against hit scan. So yeah. I think that'll be a lot of like Junkrat Brigitta.
So this is the meta for the host and outlaws.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Junkrat is back.
Exactly. He's back, mate. Right, what about this then? Since to start shifting the conversations to some of the other teams in the Overwatch League, I thought a good team to start with is the team both of you played this week, which is London Spitfire. So, Surefour, once upon a time, defeating the London Spitfire was an incredible accomplishment that people aspired to. It happened so rarely. They have been losing a lot of games, but even so, what would you say? What did it take to defeat them? Why do you think you were able to beat them?
I mean, I think we're like London Spitfire's kryptonite, because we beat them in the preseason, then we beat them the next time we faced them, and then we beat them again. And I think Fissure is able to do a lot against that, because he was on their team, so he has a lot of insight onto them that they don't have any insight onto us. And Birdring having like an injury or whatever is going on with him obviously affects them as well.
Yes.
But we beat them when they were playing Bird Ring as well. I think we're just like really good at facing them, but not having Bird Ring obviously like affects some of their versatility and some of like their usual.
I think Bird Ring's like insane, and it's really bad that they can't play him right now.
Okay, because obviously on the other side of the equation, Dante, this is where I should just awkwardly pretend like all that stuff I just said before didn't happen. It'd be like that London Spitfire team, hell of a team, isn't it? Real tough to play. What happened in your game against them?
They were just like ready for everything. We didn't adapt at all. They just knew how to beat us, and we didn't change our play style. We just like let ourselves get farmed. Like our defenses were really good on the maps, but our offenses we were just like shutting down. We didn't adapt at all.
Standard San Francisco shock though, and that was even happening in stage 2 or stage 1.
We were choking. San Francisco choke.
Monty, isn't it kind of a bit of a dire situation for London Spitfire at the moment? Not least with the Bird Ring thing, but also just the record's terrible.
Well, the record this stage is terrible. They're still well in contention for all season playoffs. I think that this was always a problem that London was having because they were changing out their roster constantly in stage 1, stage 2. We'd see a new mix-up pretty much every week. And sometimes, like, when they're at their best, they're the best team in the league. But they have more variability, I think, than New York does. I think in the short term right now, not having Bird Ring because of his playmaking abilities and the fact that this was a team that was based around Bird Ring and Prophet being the best DPS duo in theory on paper in Overwatch League when they came in. So not having him now is a big problem. And also, even though Hureg did play, I think, very well against San Francisco, he is not Bird Ring, right? And he's not at the same consistent high level that Bird Ring is. He can get up there for sure, but he's not there all the time. And I think that's a big problem for a team that was supposed to be built around its main tank and its DPS.
There's also always problems with like you never know how a player actually plays until you're on a team with them. Like there's stylistic differences, there's like personality differences, there's differences in the way they calm and work with other players. So you never know how Bird Ring actually like talks with his teammates or what the difference is with Hureg. So there's always like that kind of little thing with teams.
Yeah. Like maybe one's just like better fit. Like Bird Ring, maybe his comms just help the team so much, or maybe it's just like
he has a certain play style that matches with other players on his team.
Yeah, I noticed that too with a lot of teams.
Well, by that logic, though, he won with the GC Busan. Most of his teammates are still on this team, right? So, especially he should be well acclimated to working with Closer, Gesture, Prophet, many of the players that have been playing, because Fury and Badoshin were the big differences this week. I think that this week we saw a more stable lineup for London. I do think that London probably also should have won the game that they played against the Gladiators, but they didn't do that. It was really quite a close series. I think that once they get Bird Ring back, and if this roster stabilizes, because now it looks like at least this week they were not swapping everybody in and out hodgepodge as they had previously, then maybe they can reach a point of stability where they can start to slowly integrate some of these other players back in. I also think with Bird Ring's injury and with the way the meta changed in the way that it did, that they probably would really like to have Rascal still on this roster for flexibility. His Sombra play was top tier. I think he would have been a better fill-in than Hureg on the map pool and with the heroes that he had available to him and just his general skill level. So perhaps you look back on that with some level of regret if you're London.
They wanted to leave the team though to like have more starting time on other teams.
I mean, that would make sense, right?
So it's not really like entirely London's fault that they like traded, because it's kind of like the players' wishes as well. But yeah, it's always good. That's why I like having like our 4-man DPS roster, because even though some people won't have play time, there will be a chance where like eventually they can like specialize in a certain hero and like come out more.
Yeah, and it just, again, it depends on the map pool and the meta. You know, you might get lucky and play a lot during one stage because you've been working on these heroes. And I think that as we go on in Overwatch League, I think what happened was a lot of the players were used to being starting level players prior to Overwatch League on Apex or on their contenders teams in the West. But the league has become so coached and specialized right now, and that teams are really, I think, one of the exciting things about Overwatch to me as an esport is that I do get to see people using specific players for specific situations, which I personally like because I think it's like min-maxing your talent. You can have a niche player who does one thing very well that you can bring out for these strategies. So I really like that. But I know it's not necessarily fun for all of the players because they don't get to play all the time. But I think that's just the reality of Overwatch League. And if we're going to get the highest quality matches possible, I think players just need to get over it that they're not going to be starting necessarily every single game. And it went from a place where I think early in Overwatch League, it seemed like the teams with the more stable rosters were doing better because people were getting into the swing of things, understanding how to practice and how to play in the league. But now we've had enough time where all of the teammates, or at least many of the teammates on any given team, can have built up enough synergy that pulling certain players in and out is more feasible.
Yeah, I think I don't think supports should ever be changed, and I think tanks, like you really shouldn't unless it's maybe like a map like Junkertown. Maybe if you have like an off tank that's like really good at Hog, or I guess Divas still play it all the time, but like maybe someone's better at Orisa. I think that's the only time you should change your tank line. But I think DPS subs are like really important because there's just like to be good at like every DPS hero is just impossible. Like there's gonna be people that are better at different DPS heroes, but tank line, like Winston Divas in every match, so it wouldn't make sense to really change it. And supports are normally Zen Mercy.
Once there's more supports and tanks.
Exactly. This is another thing that as to what I was support tanks are in the game, then I think that's true. And it's not like they're going to stop releasing heroes. And we've been seeing overall, we've seen the addition of many more supports and tanks since the game's release than we have of DPS heroes. Because at least I think Sombra is different now, but I personally would have classified Sombra on release, the one that with the health packs that was getting her ult, as support. Not, I mean, yes, it was a DPS, but it didn't play like a DPS. It didn't do any damage.
Well, originally they were making her as a support, but then they switched her to DPS.
I've joked around with the development team being like, good job classifying her as DPS so people think she's a DPS when you're actually just adding more supports to the game. What it needs. That's what I've said to them. But yeah, I don't really see like a lot of need for other DPS. And even let's say Doomfist, is he really a DPS? He's sort of like a DPS tank hybrid, but they've been moving away from like hit scan DPS really, and because the DPS they have released are weird.
Like I said earlier, hit scan is just so hard to balance because you can only really balance around mechanical skill, and once you can't do that, it's like, well, I can't really give them too strong of abilities or else they'll just be overpowered. So I kind of just have to give them like these kind of abilities that help them out. So then like, that's why like you always see like more Genji and then like Doomfist came out, because since it's more like MOBA related with like abilities, you can like balance around their abilities way more. And like the mechanical skill like comes with it a little bit, but it's basically all about how like you decide your cooldowns, especially with Genji.
Yeah.
The only other hit scan hero I'd want to see like added to the game is a burst rifle hit scan, because I think you could balance around that one a lot more, because I think burst rifles are like the epitome of like aim skill, because it's like really hard. And I think Mei is like one of those examples of like really hard projectile, because
so it'll basically be like an AK or something.
No, not an AK, like a, you know, like a battle rifle in Halo, like a BR.
Right,
three shots.
Right. I see what you mean. Right.
Because not only do you have to track reliably, because you have to time your burst and keep on target at the same time.
Yeah.
McCree's flicking, soldiers mostly tracking, but then you have RNG elements to it.
And also with the burst rifle, something that Doa and I have talked about is, if you remember in Unreal Tournament, there was a weapon called the shock rifle, which had an alternate fire that would shoot out the slow ball, and if you hit it with your primary fire, it would like explode. Having a burst rifle with that would be sick. So you like shoot out like a slow projectile, and then as soon as it gets into, you time it right so that you shoot it with your burst click and then it explodes.
Is there a reason why you don't like counterplay, Monty? Like, you want to live in a world where people are firing out balls that they sit miles away exploding while someone invisible runs around the back hking people, making their abilities not work, while people just get resurrected from the dead. Like, wait, what is this game? You're on Team 4, aren't you? Who are you?
Think about the shock rifle. idea is that it could be blocked by barriers or eaten by Diva Matrix.
Right.
So there would be counterplay to that.
Okay, that does just sound like complete ass stuff. You're the guy in the middle of the fight, right? Someone's sitting off doing that.
Well, it's not like they're gonna make it an insta-give. It'd probably be like 100 damage or something.
Sure. Okay.
Look, I just wish Sombra could tell a friend. Basically, I just want to play Unreal Tournament.
Okay.
I wish you could
just throw the translocator at someone and then just eat into them and they die.
Yeah. I love that.
So you can't teabag someone, but you can appear inside their body, exploding and killing them. And again, that's just fine. This is the world we live in. These are the rules. Is everyone on board? Man alive. What about this then? So,
can I add something?
Jump in. Come
There's
on.
something I forgot to add, but with the whole like player moving out, and sometimes I actually enjoy it a little bit because especially like it can get pretty grating, especially like with 3-2s or like just playing so many matches in a week in general, where if you're playing all the time, sometimes like the pressure gets to you a bit. But if you get subbed out, you get like more time to like recollect yourself and kind of just chill for a bit. So I actually enjoy it.
Surefour's not a diva at all, Monty. The thing is, having to play all the 5 games, I like to watch one of the games.
I think it also just like creates hype. You know what you're gonna do. The fans are like, "Oh man, well we just lost that game, but here's sure Dante," and it becomes
the biggest example.
Yeah, Pine is fucking amazing. Like when he comes in, it's so entertaining.
Yeah, I think it's awesome because like obviously there's gonna be maps that like certain people aren't good at. It's just like it feels like so much more confident. Like I know there's maps that I'm not playing. I'm like, okay, we probably win this map. Like we have Sinatra and Architect. Like this is like their best map. And there's maps that I'm playing. I'm like, okay, this is like insane for me and Architect, like, or me and Sinatra, whoever's playing. Like, I feel like it just adds so much more confidence. Like, it just makes it feel like you have the match in your favor when you have the subs for certain maps.
Okay. Did you guys feel this way at the start of Overwatch League? Did you want to start all the games when Overwatch League started, or is this something you've time?
Oh, Monty, sometimes your mic cuts out. Like on that last sentence there, we didn't hear the first part. Before it wasn't a problem. Like we could always roughly hear what you said, but I didn't hear what you said in the last part. See, what is a knight without his sword? And so when Monty lost his microphone, he just fucking rage quit the whole call. He was like, I'm out of this shit. So anyway, can you remember roughly what you were saying? You were talking about like if they felt this way about the DPS rotation at the beginning of Overwatch.
Yeah. I'm just really curious, like if they've changed their opinions from the beginning of the season to now.
I think with me, I had a little bit of ego, kind of, back in closed beta and even before the Overwatch League, and I was a little bit worried if I was even going to get into the Overwatch League or not, because I had the whole situation with like I'm on Cloud9, but I'm not on Cloud9, so I had a buyout.
A lot of people had that eventually.
But a lot of teams were like just picking up the free agents, and like most of the teams were filled up before I even got any tryouts. So I was like, I don't know what's happening with my life. So I think at the beginning I wanted to be played all the time, but then I realized like everyone in the Overwatch League is so like specialized in their heroes and so good at what they are that I wasn't confident in some of my heroes in certain matchups. Yeah. So
at first, like when I was like before Overwatch League, like the concept of subbing wasn't really a thing. So I was like, oh, that sucks. You're probably just like gonna be a sub or not. But like it's so like regularized that like subs are a thing. Like all DPS players are subbed throughout every map. There's barely anyone that plays every single map as a DPS player. Like there's some teams that there's people that play every map, but like almost every team has subs, and I think it's pretty normal to be a sub.
And I think that a lot of it also goes along to like before the Overwatch League, a lot of teams are kind of just winging it. So like that's when like a versatile player kind of shown more, because they could kind of wing it but still have like the impact, because not every team was like at the same standard. But in the Overwatch League, if you're like a winging it player against like someone who's specialized in that hero for like so long, you're gonna get outclassed. But now,
shout out to the Florida Mayhem.
Yeah, and I think everyone right now realizes that they want to win more than anything, so they realize the best chances is having this DPS player on this map. So they're like, yeah, I want to win more than anything, so I'm fine getting subbed out here.
Indeed. Right, what about this then? So while all the other Korean teams are in disarray, they're losing to some bottom ranked teams of the past, New York Excelsior.
Can I just say before we go on, that Seoul Philly match that happened this last week was one of the worst matches.
Let's just talk about Seoul then, right?
Shanghai Dragons.
Why was this one of the worst matches though? Why?
Because both teams' attacks were just absolutely atrocious. I don't know what was going on. EQO looked super off on the Genji, so you'd see Philly do a good hold or Seoul do a good hold, but neither team could put together any kind of offense whatsoever. Everyone was getting caught out on their attacks. The tank would be going in too far. EQO was getting no value out of his Dragon Blades. It was just so sloppy. Just terrible match.
What do you actually think, Surefour, of Seoul Dynasty at the moment? Because obviously they were the team where, unlike the other Koreans who all had their moment, when they were the best or they're right up there, etc. Obviously, Seoul has been the team that has struggled out of the three the most anyway. But, does it look like it's resolving? Are they worse than they were when the Overwatch League began? Where do you think they're at the moment?
I wouldn't say they're worse than where they began. I think a lot of teams are just getting better a lot because a lot of what the Overwatch League is, like I said earlier, if people have certain plans that work really well, teams that haven't seen them before are going to lose to them. But as you play plans that everyone starts learning them and everyone starts getting the knowledge that they didn't have before, and every team can use the knowledge. And I don't know what quite it is that makes Seoul struggle, but they're definitely not a bad team because they definitely have really good players. But I think a lot of teams are also getting better as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I know for some of the Korean teams, a lot of them focus Seoul Dynasty's backline a lot.
I sure do.
I wouldn't say our team focuses their backline. Well, probably do because we have Fissure and he just loves diving the supports.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure what it is with Seoul Dynasty because they definitely have good players.
It just seems like they're inconsistent. It's they're really hard to tell because there's so much that happens in the game. But it just seems like maybe they aren't really they're not winning off of win conditions. They're just not making the right plays with their ults maybe. There's a lot of fights that it seems like they should have won but they just don't win, and it's how do they lose that fight? They had all the right ults, they just how do you manage to lose that?
Or maybe
a lot like us.
Maybe Seoul Dynasty is too meticulous in a way, where they plan too much. Because I remember during our
they have 5 coaches, by the way.
I know. I remember during our Blizzard World game against them where they C9'd, and there's that meme picture of Miro's face where he's because I think their whole plan was Munchkin. Touch the cart, stall for a bit so we don't C9, and then we're going to do something off of it. But then, Munchkin got picked by hydration, and, none of them were ready to, touch the cart after. So their whole plan was, Munchkin touched the cart. Munchkin didn't touch the cart. We C9'd.
Yeah, you guys have been a major beneficiary of C9s recently.
The
London match was fucking insane, where London just refusing to get on the point for multiple maps.
And then Houston C9s against us on Nambani when me and Bishu thought we C9'd. Captain Planet made a funny tweet where he said something like, Surefour has finally found the ability to use C9 on other people.
Exactly. Yeah. Why not?
It's happened a lot for you guys recently. In your favor. I do think a lot of the Korean teams will focus the supports, especially in Stage 2 and Stage 3. I think what New York did against Seoul in Stage 2 was just aggressively dive Jaehong and Toby. They did it again in their match this week. I imagine that's exactly what London's going to do. London, I think, has still never dropped a map to Seoul. They 4-0'd them twice. And London usually plays, because the way the schedule works out, usually Seoul plays London and New York back to back. They play New York and then they play London. So their first match this next week is going to be London after playing New York, their last match of this week. And every time it seems like London watches that game, except they're a better dive team than New York is. So then they just play dive and they destroy them. Whether that's going to be true with if Birdring's back in the roster this week or not, obviously that affects their ability to dive efficiently. I don't know what I think the biggest problem that I see with Seoul, because I watch a lot of these games from the map overview, so I can see everybody's positioning. When I'm reviewing matches, most of the time I'm watching map overviews to get a general sense of team positioning and tactics, and because I've already seen the game from the production feed, so I'm like checking on things to see where everybody was. And one thing that Miro does is he sort of jumps in and he doesn't really have any backup, and then he dies. And Zephyr, I don't know why they've been playing a lot of Zephyr these days, because I know Zunba, they said something about him being possibly like with a wrist injury or something like that. I don't remember specifically, but Zephyr really just sort of stands halfway between the supports and the tanks and spins around. I don't know what he's supposed to be doing a lot of the time. He seems confused about whether to go in with Miro or to go back and protect the support line. But it's sad. It's sad because Fleta and Munchkin have been really popping off recently. I mean, their performance has been super
Munchkin
good.
is insane.
Yeah, Munchkin's super good.
What do you think, though, about the fact that, considering how incredibly highly rated Fleta is by pretty much everyone, he actually doesn't play as many games as you'd expect for a star player? What do you think about that, Monty?
Well, lately it's been because he was sick.
Oh, sure. But I mean, there was that game the other day where they just like took him out from that, didn't they?
Yeah, I think they're experimenting. I don't really know because like obviously we're not the coaches on the team, but I think they're just like they're trying to find a way to implement like everyone. And I think it's kind of dumb because Fleta, like I feel like he can just play like everything, and like there's really few like I think there's a few maps that he might not be the best pick, but I feel like for the most part he's like the optimal pick. And I think they should try to play him more.
Why are you so quiet on this topic, Monty? You would normally be incensed about something like this.
I didn't catch it, sorry.
Why are you so tranquil about the fact Fleta doesn't play sometimes in the Overwatch League? Why is it not a big deal for you? I thought you'd be going
It is. I mean, how many times can I go on about it? I feel like I have gone on about this so many times before. He's exactly the kind of player that you need on the DPS. And he complements Munchkin so well. Munchkin's able just to focus on playing the Tracer. I actually did some research the other day, and I figured out that Munchkin has less than 10 minutes of total playtime on anything but Tracer in his entire career. So not just Overwatch League, like we're going back to like Apex and all this other stuff. So like barely played anything else. So he may now on Widowmaker probably has over 10 minutes of playtime, but that's it. So he's effectively been an exclusive Tracer player his entire career. And I think Fleto's been playing fantastically. And what's so weird is that these are exactly the opposite problems that we would have expected to see from Seoul. Seoul came in being Lunatic High, known for their supports and tank strength. It's weird that they now are a team that's dominated by their DPS play, because that was never their identity previously. I sometimes wonder, I was talking to Mr. X about this, and his opinion was that Fleta plays too passively a lot of the time, that he's like afraid to walk up and put more pressure on. But I think that's more of a symptom of the fact that there is so little peeling going on within Seoul that he is just not confident in his teammates' abilities to protect him, so he's playing more passively than he could otherwise. It's obviously from the outside hard to diagnose these things because you don't know whether it's him or whether it's his teammates who are not peeling, but the teamwork just isn't there right now. Like, it's very obviously wrong when the supports are dying first in all of these fights and there's not really an ability to protect them.
Well, Fleta plays Widow in a really weird way, and it's really annoying as another Widow. But he plays in a way where like he literally hides in a certain spot the whole time and waits for his team to start a fight or create a big distraction and then peeks out. Or he waits until his team starts like creating a distraction and says where the other Widow is and then hook shot. He isn't one that like starts the engagement as the Widow. Like he doesn't go for hook shots first. He waits until like something happens to like finally peek out and take his opportunities. That's what
is that harder to play against?
I wouldn't say it's harder to play against. It's just more annoying. Like at the very start, it's very harder to play against because you don't know how he's just like somehow like killing you all the time. But like once you know how he plays or like his playlistic style, it's more annoying than anything. But I think that's just what I think the style he plays from like playing against him. I don't know if that's the exact style, but that's kind of like my synopsis.
Okay.
That's for the Widowmaker, though.
Because the thing is, like, as we said with the London example, okay, London have been a fantastic team at times. Okay, they have the whole excuse, well, one of our players isn't playing all the games. But for the Seoul Dynasty, I would literally say, in the context of how hyped they were, they are easily one of the most underwhelming teams in the whole.
Well, the Dallas feel, okay. Nobody can beat that.
I did say one of.
Yeah, it's true. There is the fact that at the end of the day, this is a team that almost certainly is going to be in the season playoffs, if only by virtue of the fact that they will be first place in the Pacific Division, which will give them an automatic berth.
Right,
but,
I see. Yeah.
But even if they weren't, they're still 18-10. They're still in fourth place. They're still top 6. They're really unlikely, I think, to fall out of that. But you never know. I mean, neither them nor London has had a good stage. So there's always the possibility that something will affect them and knock them down even further, because it seems like every time we talk about Seoul, in stage 1, it was, oh, they were never a Mercy team. Like, oh, they're going to get better once the Mercy nerfs came through. Nope, didn't really get better. Oh, they're adding these players. Maybe they'll find some way to get better. Nope, really just playing at the same level. They've never truly, I think, adjusted to the issues they're having. So I don't know. It could be a case of too many cooks in the kitchen with 5 different coaches. At times it's looked like they've attempted to outsmart people in really weird ways instead of relying on the strengths of players like Fleta. But I think almost certainly the problem is internal at this stage. Like they've been disappointing for too long, and I think that probably it's gotten to their heads a bit.
I think the other thing that is like isn't tangible and you can never really tell unless you're in the team is like the confidence levels of the players, because I've started to realize with the Overwatch League a lot that Overwatch is a game all about like how confident you are, and I think after some losses you lose confidence levels, so you're more scared to make risky plays. You're scared of like dying in a certain way. You're scared of like going in certain positions because something might happen. And maybe it's because of mentality or like headstrongness or confidence issues that this might be happening. But it's only a guess you can make because you never quite know unless you're on the team.
Sure.
Or you're talking to the players.
I think there's a pretty reasonable logic to that deduction, though, because, I mean, for example, if they're a team that don't, like, they're not consistent, they don't have something they know, like, if we do this, we'll definitely win, you're going to feel less comfortable. You're going to not be, what would you have confidence in? It doesn't always work. So I think there's something to that theory. Not bad.
I think there's also the truth that it is very different to play an Overwatch League than it was to play Overwatch prior to Overwatch League, which sounds obvious when you say it, but usually at the beginning of an esport, when before like a lot of structure comes into the scene, I remember seeing this in League of Legends when there was more of a tournament circuit prior to the creation of the LCS. It's a different skill set when you, as somebody like Surefour, who's been in Korea, who knows how Apex worked, you had 2 weeks to prepare oftentimes for one best of 5.
Mm-hmm.
And that meant you had more time off, you had more downtime to prepare. It was less of a grind, you're not playing 2 matches every week trying to prepare for 2 different opponents, which is very difficult. And it's also just the dedication and the length of time that this league goes on. I do think that we probably should have had a 2 or 3 week break between stages 2 and 3 as sort of a halfway point to the season to let people reset. Because I think a lot of players are getting burnt out. I think everybody's getting burnt out. I'm getting burnt out, because I put in just as much time into this thing as the players do, because I'm there for all the matches. I'm watching all this film. I'm in production meetings, making sure that the show is going to be good, etc. So it is a rough grind.
And I think,
I think that with these players like that were on the Fuel and players that were on Lunatic High and these teams that were very successful in the early days of Overwatch are unused to this schedule. And also, these were players who at the time they joined were there because they had a lot of natural ability. And the thing about that is that now Overwatch has been out for long enough and players have been coached more efficiently and practiced more in Overwatch League that the players who want to play more and who want to grind are going to catch up in skill to the raw talent players.
Mm-hmm. Another thing is losing will definitely like increase burnout by like 3 times. Like I think if you're like winning constantly, you're still confident and like you don't care how many matches you have, but if you're like on a losing streak or having really close losses, you're just like, this sucks.
You were about to give your experience of that, Dante?
Well, okay. What I noticed is that this stage, like, it's flown by, and it's because like we're playing better.
Okay.
It just like when you're winning, it feels like everything's going by faster. But then like I remember like stage 2, it was kind of like a grind. It felt like the stage was like really long. We just like kept on losing. Even when we got Sinatra, we lost like our first 2 games with them, and it felt like really discouraging, kind of. So it's just the losses, like they really add up, and then it makes you like tired. Not tired, but like burnt.
Okay. Well, I also think that one of the things that you guys have to learn, and what every player is going to learn in this league, is not to take losses so hard.
Yep.
This is everybody's first season. I think players, there are very few players who played at like a top level in other games. Gamsu, Bishu, these guys, because we didn't get many of the other veterans. Like had we had Rafa, Cooler, some of these players from Quake that had come in. But nobody's really been in like a really hard grind and had to deal with losses before, besides a very select group of pros who have been in this team environment for an extended period. And I think that, unfortunately, the only thing to say is that players will become jaded. A couple, by season 3, you're not going to take losses as hard. You'll be like, shit, well, we still have to do more work, but you're accustomed to it at that stage.
Yeah, I'm not really one that like gets like really, really upset. It's just like, it felt like it just naturally felt longer. It's like when you're doing something in school, like obviously if you're enjoying it, like you're enjoying winning way more than you're enjoying losing. So like it just goes like time's flying. But, like,
indeed, time flies when you're having fun, as they say.
Yeah.
I think
it's the same.
I think one of the things might be affecting other players, and they still have to like go through it. I know I had to go through it a bit, and because Overwatch is like the first thing that put me in the limelight, and I've had so much like popularity and like positivity around me, definitely in the early days. It's
sure, yeah.
Since I didn't have anything like that before Overwatch, I grew that kind of ego, and I love seeing what people said about me. I think some of the players, especially when you...
He's out there Googling his own name, looking on. I bet you do. You open the competitive Overwatch, you do the Control F, you put in Surefour.
I've done that, especially during the start. I was like, wow, this is great. All these people are validating me. But like, I think I've matured in a bit where like the only input I should really care about is from my coaches. So I think that's helped me a lot, especially in losses where maybe if I played bad or it looks like I played bad, it doesn't matter because the only ones that should matter to me are like my coaches and my teammates. But I think some players are going to have to learn. Like, I'm pretty sure there are some players that still do that, like Google their name. And especially after a loss, if they do that and see what people say about them, if it's negative comments, it'll affect their mindset even more. And that falls back on like mindset and confidence. And I think a lot of people just have to ignore the public in a way. And if you are going to read the public, you kind of have to like take it with a grain of salt.
Sure.
Yeah, because they're randoms who don't understand the game or your internal team dynamic or personalities that are involved or anything like that. And this is their hobby. They want to cheer for you, or they just hate you. Who knows? Sure. They could be irrational haters. We all have.
I'm pretty
those
sure
as well.
I have a lot of those.
Where you're just. I mean, it's honestly hilarious because this is why I always like when teams do those like the players reading hateful tweets because it's like so funny.
Yes.
Because you're just like in your own life, you're just a dude living your fucking life, trying to do your job, and then people are just sending these just horrible things to you. You're like, what the hell did I do to deserve this?
My favorites are always the ones where they're not even actually like a critique. It's just something like, why does this guy have to live? Can't he just die? It's like, come on, man. There's nothing even in that, is there? It's just horrible. The problem is, though, this is also a function of like the esports world because if you think about it, right, this is one of the reasons why I don't personally get as mad at people saying stupid stuff on forums if they're just speculating or giving an opinion, because they do have to have somewhere to have a fans discussion. That's part of being a fan. And the problem in that scenario is when they're just doing it in public like that, as in just like separate to me or you or whoever, we're not obliged to read it, so we can choose not to, and it can just be their little area, in something like the NBA, I doubt LeBron's just in every thread afterwards. Like, what's he saying about me? Are you aware I could have slammed in his? Like he doesn't care, does he? But it's obviously different if they just send the tweet directly to you.
Yeah, you have no choice but to read it. Like, it's
although Monty, speaking of which, that one that you got was fucking amazing. Did you see this on Monty's timeline? He got a tweet right where someone said something like along the lines of like, you're a guy who always tries to tries to tries to stop everyone having fun. You seem like the kind of guy who would go into a bowling alley.
No, his dad owns a bowling alley.
Oh, that's right. Yes. And you would tell him or something like it was a complete non sequitur.
Everybody's fun. I was like, that's really specific.
That is, by the way, you do realize that is the ultimate example of one of those insults where all you're supposed to reply is you just say, "Who hurt you?" Because that obviously just happened to this guy, didn't he? Some guy in a bowling alley. And then he got beat up or something.
It's such a weird thing because, especially, I think it's extra weird because in esports we do shows like this where we all sit around and chat with each other. And if you thought about it for 2 seconds, I mean, people get mad at me because they think that I'm like being mean to the teams or players, where what I'm doing is just bantering for entertainment. I don't hold ill will towards the players. Like, I don't want people to suffer in the league for my entertainment. I understand that these guys all do put their heart on the line in these games and really work hard. And it sucks to see people that I genuinely like personally lose games or play badly. But I mean, that's just part of life. And unfortunately, it's my job to commentate on that. And yes, I do things more for like humor or entertainment or banter value. But I think everybody, at least in Overwatch League, knows that that's not coming from a bad place. And that's why it's not like people don't refuse to come on this show. You know what I mean? Because they know it's a different kind of environment where we can have these conversations, and it's not mean-spirited, but people treat it as though it is for whatever reason.
Just like, I remember there was one of these where you were talking with other people and you ended up calling me overrated. And you have to learn just like not get mad out of these comments or anything. Like, even if you don't think it, you kind of just have to take the criticism and like maybe you are at that point and you just got to get better.
Here's the thing,
which also doesn't mean you're bad, by the way.
Yeah,
sure,
obviously,
you as a player were very hyped coming into Overwatch League, and you struggled at the beginning, and now you've turned it around, and you're doing very well again. So it's just this is usually that kind of reaction is simply a reaction to what the fans are saying versus what I perceive the reality to be, which doesn't mean to say that you were bad. It just means to say that you're not at that time. I think you're definitely in the conversations for best Widowmakers in this stage, particularly.
And what I was saying is like, I didn't take that comment as like a personal spite or anything. So it's like you just have to take these comments that people make and just
it's also
happy with yourself.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is my job to talk about the game.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, also in your case, Surefour, that will just be the case sometimes in your career anyway. Whenever you're having underperformances, if you're a very popular player, there are going to be the blind fans who just love you no matter what, and they will always, it wasn't his fault. It was the other members of the team. I won't say anyone's name now. I won't throw in the bus, but it was their fault. They didn't do it right for him. Why isn't he playing that hero? So you always get blown up. Speaking of which, though, I was thinking this actually. Since you've got that hair color at the moment, I don't know if you saw this, but in League of Legends, another player who's very popular and people love his personality and who in fact plays for Cloud9 is the Cloud9 player Sneaky, right?
Oh, Sneaky.
And Sneaky, it actually recently. If you haven't been following, this is going to sound very weird.
I know what you're going to talk about.
Are you ready? I've got a good suggestion for you, mate. All I'm saying is this, right? So he did these 2 photo shoots. One where he was... Who were the people he played as? Was one Caitlyn? No, who was it?
It was one Caitlyn and one Sivir. No, wait, Lux. It was Lux and Sivir.
Lux and Sivir, right, okay.
Sivir.
Yeah, the pizza delivery Sivir was the most recent.
Yes, because here's the thing. And by the way, he was obviously playing with the fact that, as far as I know, he is indeed male, and those characters obviously are female in the game. Now, I thought you could go with a similar route, Surefour, because with that hair color, I want to see a Mercy cosplay.
Isn't Mercy more blonde, though?
Just put a bit of highlights in there, I don't know. Believe it or not, I think there'd be more problems with the cosplay than the fact that the hair wouldn't be exactly right,
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to do any female gender-bending cosplay anytime soon.
One thing you were saying earlier is like how like the fans they kind of like get an expectation for you.
Sure.
Like that's one thing that kind of like sucks. Like because people are like saying like I'm like the best Sombra, and I'm like if I have a bad game on Sombra, then it's like shit, I'm washed up, GG. And yeah, I think it's kind of like annoying having to like live up to a name because like obviously like you're never gonna be perfect. Like you're gonna have bad games. Like everyone has bad games, and it just kind of sucks like when people like are just so quick to be like, oh, he's bad. But yeah,
there is Monty, like you're saying, because these guys haven't been pros before. They are sort of learning. You can feel them feeling it out.
It's
like,
adorable, isn't it?
Some of their complaints are just hilarious, aren't they? Like, oh, maybe I shouldn't play all the maps. Oh, it's really tough when everyone's saying you're the best, because then when you're slightly not the best, you feel bad. I think we should transfer these guys to the Shanghai Dragons for a few weeks.
So many different emotional rides and stuff.
Yeah. Just discovering yourself as a person.
Yep. Speaking of the Shanghai Dragons, I think if they lose their next game, which is to New York, that they will have the longest consecutive loss streak in professional sports history.
They could have finished it yesterday.
They could have stopped it. So disappointing.
It was so close.
You hate to see it.
Right. I find it weirdly fascinating in a way.
What, watching them lose?
Watching them lose every game. It's obviously not a streak that you want to hold, but it is very interesting that it exists and could happen.
It's because it's like that Bane thing, isn't it? Like, your punishment must be more severe. Like, how many games do they have to lose in a row? It's actually so tragic, isn't it?
And then they get all the fans because they're the underdog, the complete underdog. Everyone just wants them to win.
Well, here's the thing.
By the way, that's why I made that tweet where I was like, it's weird coming back. I made a tweet where I said it's weird coming back to the States where people like underdogs. Because in Korea, if this team was in Korea, no one would care.
Yeah.
They would just sit there and be like, why is this team here? And this is one of the reasons why Koreans fans like the promotion relegation, because they're like, nope, just get them out. We're done with those guys. But yeah, there's no like sense of real underdog pride in Korea because everybody just wants to appreciate the game in its top form and the top teams. So coming back to the States and having everybody like lose their shit cheering for Shanghai is an interesting experience for me.
I wonder what it's going to be like in Shanghai when they win a game. The streets are just going to be crazy. Everyone's going to be partying.
Yeah.
It's like they just won the Super Bowl.
Because the weird thing is there's a lot of Chinese viewership for Overwatch.
Yeah, that's huge.
So a lot of Chinese fans.
Are you not aware, Monty? That
I think
esports is so big now. They said that 95 million people watched the League of Legends final.
Wow.
You're gonna have to go to China at some point, Monty. Be careful.
The LPL final.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Oh, did I say the other one right? Yeah. I meant the League of Legends.
So the Chinese League final. I don't know what to think about these numbers because the problem with the reporting.
I'm going to guess 6% of people in China didn't watch the match. Just my feeling.
That's a huge number of people, like 6% of the Chinese population.
Something like that. Yeah,
it's crazy. Maybe they're real, but the problem is nobody can independently verify these numbers. And the companies that release these numbers, like Tencent, I believe, I think Tencent's releasing these numbers, and they're the company that owns the game. So they have every reason to lie. And also all the view botting and everything that happens. It's so hard to know what's real. I'm not saying it's not real. I'm saying it's impossible to know. And it does seem suspicious.
The thing is, though, I actually do feel like the players in the team of Shanghai Dragons shouldn't feel that bad because I've watched a lot of interviews. I've done a lot of interviews in my time. And some of the things I've learned from interviews is that, especially Korean players, they play and show really good games if fans cheer for them. And whenever teams are winning, they say, this wouldn't be possible without the fans. Like, their support's what made us get. So basically, would you Shanghai Dragons fans just get your arse in gear? You haven't won a single game. Why are you denying these guys the powers? Give them your magical powers. They've lost 99 maps, Monty. 99.
Yeah, they almost crossed the 100 map threshold.
They'll get there. Give them time. They'll get there. They're literally going to have triple-digit losses on maps. Tell you what, they went from 0 to 100 fast.
And to put that in perspective, what you're saying. So each team plays 10 matches a stage, which means they play 40 maps a stage, which means that in total, without map 5s that you might go to, you would play 160 maps in the regular season. And we're not even done with season 3, and they're almost over the 100 map barrier, which means that out of normal non-map 5s, and they've played 4 map 5s now and lost the. No, wait. Yes, 4 map. It's 3 or 4 map 5s and lost them all. So by the end of the stage, they will have played somewhere on the order of 123, 124 maps approximately, and they might be in a position where they've lost like 105 to 110 of those maps.
Is Shanghai just Philly's kryptonite? Wasn't the last time?
Yes.
Philly at 2-2-2? So like,
it was.
What happens there?
I don't know.
Why do you think that is?
Let's talk about Philly in general. Why are they so? They're so inconsistent. like one, you know, at the end of the stage, they make the finals, and at the same time, they're spending so much time getting back-to-back map 5 by the Shanghai Dragons.
I don't know. Overwatch is a crazy game.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So much of it is just like the team's interworkings that you have no idea how the comms are or how the players play with each other. That like you can only speculate, and then you only know the problems once you're in that atmosphere. So it's like there's so much in Overwatch. It's just you have to be there to understand it. That makes it so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Were they easier to play this stage than in the past? Did you play them this stage?
I think we don't play Philly this stage.
Let me have a look. Yeah, you're right. You don't actually. Did you play them, Dante?
Yeah, we play them. We beat them 3-1.
Okay. What do you think? What do you think their problems are?
Architect knew how Carpe played, and he like really shut him down hard on Widow. Like he knew Carpe would always Carpe like perma flanks on Widow, so he was like, okay, if I'm just like really aware of the flanks. Yeah, he was just really aware of the flanks, and like I don't know, it was insane. Like he would be like shooting tanks, and like 2 seconds later he'd be like, okay, I'm gonna watch the flank, and Carpe comes like right there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like so smart. Like he just always knew where Carpe was, and that's really good. Especially like it's hard because like it's hard to scout out Carpe because like obviously there's a language barrier. Like so, say he's like in a weird spot, and like Architect probably won't understand. Like he's like behind gas station, like that might be like too hard. Like he might not understand. Like I don't know. That's just like a really brief example, but like say we say a weird call out, he might not understand. But like he always just knew where he was, and that was really impressive by Architect. Just,
do you
like,
not have
game awareness?
Do you not have like a standardized callouts for each map that you all have to learn?
Well, yeah, we did like callouts a while ago, but not with Architect on the team yet. We haven't like went over them with
for
them.
each Korean player that we've had join, we all have like key phrases that even with language barrier, they'll learn to understand because we just have like a set thing, and we make everyone learn each map callout. So besides whether it's a language barrier or not, this is the word for that location, and then everyone just knows it.
Can you, obviously without giving up too much, can you give one example of that?
Well, we have like a certain callout called like dark. So we try and use that callout as much as possible at each map. So wherever there's a place that looks like it's dark, that place is now dark. So regardless of what it looks like, as long as they know that's dark, it's dark.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he's picking up on that stuff pretty well. Like,
well, you also hear in the Houston Outlaws comms, teams are starting to use very shorthand explanations for what to do as a team. So, like we broadcast this week a clip of Houston's comms where they were shouting Texas hard, which means get back to the point, as far as I can tell, or like play defensively around the point, and it makes things a lot easier. You guys using any comms like that?
I guess like one I could say that's pretty obvious, but we have we call them keywords. So once they learn that keyword, if they hear that keyword, they know what it is. So we don't have to go into detail. So like a short thing, like one of them is regroup. So if you say regroup point, no matter where you are in the map, you come back to point and you heal up, and then especially if you've dived and like killed someone, you say regroup point, and then everyone can come and sustain themselves again and then pick off the stragglers.
Yeah, another one that like I started using that because like I saw Fate, he would always say in ranked, like whenever I played him, he'd be like slow down. So like I try to say that a lot. Like say we like we get like 2 kills and like we're all really low, but like slow down, just slow. Like everyone just slows down, we like heal up, and it helps the team a lot, I think. Another one, like a word we have for a play, like a set play, is fireball, and that's like we just use our trans offensively with it. It's like really basic. We just like discord the Zen, and then we like hold W into him or something, or like a hit scan, whatever.
I'll tell you an amazing call out, right, that from Counter-Strike, that you don't have to know anything about the game to appreciate this story, but it's just an example of like what British banter is like. And if anyone who's American thinks that like trash talking's harsh, like there's some really cruel stuff that British people say to each other. So the backstory is, right, one of the most famous British Counter-Strike players from a long time ago, even in like CS Source, was a guy called Rattlesnake. And the thing about this guy was he was a pretty good player and he was like the leader and the AWPer and stuff. But his problem was he had a massive ego and he was a really, really bad at like losing teammates because he would just be way too critical of them. He was literally, like, bear in mind, he was the leader. He would berate the teammates, you know, and just be like screaming at them in the game. And so as a result, loads of people in the UK scene had played with him, but now, you know, no longer did. They were on some other team. And so as a result, he also had a lot of like, you know, resentment against him and like animosity to him. And this is the key detail that makes this story ridiculous, is in his younger days when he was just, you know, I don't know, 18, 19 or whatever playing, and he was a good player, he also used to explain away whenever he would be losing and wouldn't be doing well with the most obnoxious story ever by saying, it doesn't matter anyway, I'm just fucking around playing this game and I'm going to become a lawyer anyway after this and you losers are going to be playing this game. Here's the details for you, Monty. Are you ready? Just as, and by the way, unlike Monty, I'm not that enlightened. I do enjoy the schadenfreude of seeing people's lives just collapse around themselves who are arseholes. Actually, that's almost more pleasurable than my own life going well. I don't know why. It's just a sickness, Monty. I've learned how to convert the darkness of the world into my own light. So what I did is, I checked in recently and I actually asked someone, because he came back to CSGO, and this is years after he was at his prime in CS Source, right? So I said to someone like, oh, right, why is he back? I thought he was, you know, I actually thought he was telling the truth. Like, I thought he was going to become a lawyer or something. They were like, oh yeah, that didn't happen. And actually, in fact, you should hear this new call out that they've got now, because the thing is, someone found out that he's actually got a job in a supermarket and he's a shelf stacker, which obviously, first of all, in the context of like, yeah, I'm going to be a lawyer, you losers, is like, in the UK, that's like basically the most basic job you can do. You just get paid, you know, the lowest wage, and all you do literally is just put stuff on the shelf. That's all you do. And hilariously, right, in the UK, one of our most famous items that you have in a supermarket is baked beans, right? You know, you have the can of baked beans. So what they did is, when he would play on Dust 2, in the B bomb site, the famous spot where the AWPer goes is the box at the back of the B bomb site, right, where they can crouch down and they can't be shot through it. So since the AWPer always goes there, the UK players, to banter this guy, just started calling that spot Beans, and that's what it's called now. So because this guy would be there. Isn't that just so cruel but wicked at the same time? It's fucking amazing, isn't it? Whoever thought that up, that is a sick call out. That is amazing.
I love things with stories like that too.
It's good, isn't it? Yeah, the anecdote. Right.
I won't go.
Come on, you were going to reveal one.
Well, I won't go into it because I didn't make the call out, but I will say there are some call outs on our teams based off of specific players and their tendencies. And
usually them being bad or something, right?
Well, there are some good ones.
Right, okay.
I guess I'll say a good one, for example. So, you know the spot on Junkertown where there's that little like piece of metal at the top left from the defender's perspective that you can sit on?
Yes.
I call that Fleta spot because like he killed my team a bunch on that spot.
Okay.
So that's a good example. And then there are some bad examples. So someone does a certain something like feeding and you say, oh, he pulled off of this.
Yeah, we had that on my old team, Arc 6. It was about someone, but yeah, that's a never mind.
I guess you could say one with XQC. Whenever a Winston jumps,
yeah, he pulled an XQC.
Yeah, you pulled an XQC. That's like a call out.
Yeah. And then on Anubis, we're like Jonak spot, because there's a spot that like Jonak started playing in, and he was like the first one to play there. So we're like, oh, Jonak.
Yeah, we call that Jonak spot too. That little
you call it
metal on top of the arch. Yeah.
Like he's in Jonak spot.
Yeah.
So one team we haven't talked about at all actually so far is Boston Uprising, the undefeated 8-0 Boston Uprising.
Oh, overrated.
3-2 Warriors.
That's the thing, right? Is that Boston has been riding a. When I say overrated, everybody's like they beat all the full Korean rosters. They could go 10-0. I mean, maybe, but I think you're in a real problem spot where this team has been playing it so close this stage that you get very concerned that they can actually finish off the 10-0 streak, because it's been all of these 3-2s, like Surefour says, even when they've been playing somewhat surprisingly close games against the Florida Mayhem. I think that fans are really into this storyline too about Dream Casper being replaced by Mistakes and Mistakes stepping up, when in my opinion, my personal opinion, I don't think Mistakes, I think he's been okay. I don't think he's been great. I don't think that he is living up to Dream Casper's level of play or hero flexibility. And I think that it's mostly been Striker and Note and Gamsu and those guys that have been popping off that have been making this team really good. And there are great things about them. Fantastic dive team, really coordinated with their Tracer and their tank line. They are a good team, no doubt. But are they going to win this stage? No. It's been too close for comfort, and I think that a lot of the other teams underperforming have really helped them out.
Right, I'll just put a pin in the part about whether they win or not, because I want to ask them that. But I will just say, right, here's the thing, Monty. I've decided what we're going to do is we're going to fight flame with flame. So I'm actually going to preemptively, like, sort of take away the sting of people who are your haters talking shit on you by basically doing my own mini version of it before. So if anyone's keeping track who's a Monty hater, right, and you know all those weeks where every time a Korean team loses, he's like, well, they actually in the game after were playing a better team and they were probably preparing for that one, so, you know, it's not a big a deal they lost. He then did just take the team that is undefeated and be like, they're only just winning over it. Like, even though it's totally valid, yes, it was.
It's because of how it's like the 3-2s have been really, really close.
Well, Monty, you have to understand, when they have Striker, they guarantee win the first Koth map, and they guarantee win the tiebreaker because it's Koth. So, yeah,
why is that though? Why is that?
It's just Tracer is a dominant ability. Koth is like the Tracer because it's literally just pure deathmatch.
Yeah, and Striker just goes wild, and yeah.
So do you guys think that Striker is the best Tracer in Owl, right?
I think so. Well, how he works with this team, I think, yeah. Obviously, there's like different play styles. Like, Sabiolbe's like another like top Tracer that everyone says is like the best. But like, I think him and Striker are like a lot different, and like the way their team's set up is a lot different. So like, you can't say there's really a best Tracer, but I would say they're both like really, really, really good.
What do you think of Monty's question though? Will Boston Uprising win this stage?
I think it just depends on it, since they're probably first seed. If they're first seed, then they get to choose, and if they choose, like, they might choose a team that's like really not that good, but like, what if that team just does better than them, like has a good play style against them, or like prepares better? So I think it kind of just depends on who they verse.
Because here's the thing, obviously, they could end up playing either of your teams. That could still happen. Yeah, that could be the case. They might pick one of you. So, how do you think your teams actually match up against Boston Uprising? If in case, just shadow boxing it.
Well, we play.
Well, he has to know he plays it. Look, Gladiators are the best chance to beat the Boston Uprising.
Yeah. We're both the 3-2 warriors. Who's the best 3-2 warrior?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is like, if you just contain Gamsu and Tracer and Striker correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Be honest, do you think Mistakes is a big threat?
I wouldn't say I'm too worried about Mistakes. I'm always worried about Striker though.
Yeah. I think Mistakes is like, he's like really good, but not like someone you have to worry about, if that makes sense. Like he's like
a good supportive DPS.
If you ignore him, then like obviously he'll own you. But like if you you don't need to like have him marked 24/7. Like people like Sabiolbe, Pine, like you always have to be like on luck for them. Like it's really hard to manage DPS duos like that. But then like with Mistakes and Striker, like you just like have to mainly worry about Striker, I think.
Is that actually the term that people generally use in OWL, mark the player? Because that's actually a player. I've never heard it in American sports, but that's what you say in European soccer, basically. That's what your defensive assignment is. Like if you're playing one-on-one, you mark that guy and you follow him around the pitch, and I guess you sort of do it in the NBA, they just don't use that term. Is that what people say in OWL?
Well, there's a term for Tracer players where you mark the other Tracer, and it's usually based on like defensive comps.
Right.
You don't want the enemy Tracer to go into the back line, so you mark / block them with your Tracer. So that's like one form of it.
I think a lot of people say contest. I just said mark because that's the first thing that came to word.
It's a good term for it, though, regardless.
Yeah, it's good. Especially because actually what famously happened in soccer was that used to be the way everyone played. Like you always, same thing, I mean, it's basically the same concept as the NBA, NFL.
It's man-to-man versus zone.
Yes, you originally used to have one-on-one, but then what happened is they evolved it where, it depends how you play. If you're a really amazing defensive team, once someone moves past a certain part of the field, someone else picks him up, So obviously with certain team styles, I could see how that would work. Right, okay, what about this then? So
the thing about Boston, just to talk about their matchups.
Yeah, let's do it.
Is that they've had some really close matchups. And I don't think that given how close it can be, they can do another week. I think they probably beat the Valiant. But I was talking to Mr. X about this, and he thinks that you Gladiators are going to beat Boston, which I think is probably the best chance. But I don't see them going 2-0 this week, especially since before Gladiators, like they play Valiant at 6 p.m. on Wednesday or Thursday, and then they play you the first. They have the first match on Friday, so it's not directly back to back. They have one game on. They don't have
Thursday more scrims to prep. Like say they have like a different map pool. They don't have another day to practice. They just have their warm up scrim.
Yeah, that's what I mean by back to back.
Yeah.
Last week we had a back to back where it was London and then into Houston.
They do have two of the same maps, which are Nepal and Route 66, but Temple and Blizzard World are played against Valiant, and Volskaya and Numbani are played against Gladiators.
Yeah.
The thing about Gladiators is you guys have been really good on Volskaya recently, and obviously Boston is still undefeated on that map, but you're undefeated in this stage on that map so far, and you've looked really strong. Numbani has always been a bad map for Boston. So there's that advantage as well. I don't know. I think Boston.
Route 66 seems to be our bad map, though.
Fair enough. I think it like obviously this could probably be a 5-map series or close to it. But if Boston loses, it's as a reminder, New York has lost a match to Boston, but they still have a better map differential than Boston right now. And New York's matches are Dallas and Shanghai this week. So any match loss will probably result in, unless there's some very weird games that happen with New York.
Is the tiebreaker differential as opposed to head-to-head?
Right, because the map differential is always the first tiebreaker.
All right, okay.
Which is how it should be, because not to get too much into formats, but when you're playing basically a full round robin and what you're testing is, for playoff seeds, what you're testing is the strength against the entire field rather than a specific opponent. So head-to-head is the backup tiebreaker if there is no...
If people want to hear a rant about that, there is a video on Monty's channel where he goes on and on about that in a League of Legends context.
I'm the only one who cares. It's fine. Yes, there
something
is
of an axe to grind for him.
I get angry about head-to-head being above map differential, basically. And also because not every team plays against each other in every stage.
Yes.
You only play 10 matches instead of 11, so everybody always misses one opponent. So you have to have that kind of as your primary tiebreaker. But it's good either way. That's how it should be. So yes, it will be map differential. And considering New York is already plus 16 and Boston is plus 15, and we expect New York to win both of their matches, and there's a possibility that that Boston does not. In almost every conceivable scenario, if New York wins 2 and Boston only wins 1, then we will have New York as the number 1 seed.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk now about the LA Valiant, because obviously they have a great record. I know Monty did say it was the schedule in some of the past weeks, and they have had very up and down results recently. Like when they played some of the really good teams, they haven't been as good necessarily. Sometimes they've been all right. Where do you think they're at, Monty?
I think that they are a team that, especially with a player like Bunny, that's always going to dump on the worst teams in the league. Because if you don't have coordination, Bunny is just going to kill your support line by himself. He's an independent player, but if you are peeling for your backline properly, Bunny is not coordinated with the rest of his team. He is an independent actor, and I think that can be a problem in the long run. When it comes to playing against the best teams, I don't think Valiant is going to pass muster. I think they're going to continue to be a lower tier or like a mid-table team as a result of this. I don't really see how they're going to grow more. Obviously, it was one map, but KSF's debut against Houston was pretty bad.
Welcome to the Overwatch League.
That was so good. I loved that.
I was
Did you see that, Thorin? Did you see that, Thorin?
Yeah. It's ridiculous, wasn't it?
It was so funny. Like I love the just the banter that goes on in comms. It's pretty hilarious.
I actually didn't see it. What happened?
Okay,
it was on Blizzard World. Houston full holds Valiant. KSF is just playing Genji.
It was KSF's debut match.
Yeah, it was his debut game. And at the end, the league pulled out like a 30-second comm clip, which is just the end of the map. And at the end of it, Jake just shouts, as soon as like time expires and they full hold, Jake just shouts, "Welcome to the Overwatch League."
That's funny.
Pretty good.
And the reasoning for running KSF is they probably wanted to run Widow on second point.
Yeah.
But they never got to play never got past first point.
That's what I surmised based on why they would use him as a Genji Widow flex player, but
yeah,
it just didn't work.
That's legit banter, though.
Oh, Jake loves banter.
That's legit. I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
So what do you think of the Valiant overall, then? Dante, come on, tell me, mate.
I think Fate and Space are like a top tier tank duo. I think they're like maybe a top 3 duo. I think they're just like really, really, really good. I think Space peels a lot, so it's really good against certain teams' playstyles. Maybe like really aggro tanks like Fisher. I think it would be good against, like from Gladiators. But I think their DPS. I think it's just like really weird because they're really limited what they could do. With agilities, they can't really run hit scan. Or they can, but like they can't really play hit scan and tracer. Like if they're playing agility soon, they can't play like tracer or like agility doesn't play tracer or hit scan. So it's like he's pure projectile, so it like really limits what they can do. And I think agility is like if he played tracer or a hit scan at a top level, it would like really enable them just to like play him all the time, and then I think they would own.
Yeah, I think with the Valiant, it's like their DPS lineup makes it very predictable on what they're going to do.
Yeah.
You kind of know the play style they're going to do, and you can just play around it. And I think our loss against them was more of us just making mistakes rather than Valiant pulling up the win. But yeah, Space plays really passive, so if you have a really dive-heavy tank, he's going to get punished more. But if you just switch your play style, they kind of get into a rut in a bit. So they're really predictable, I think.
Well, also, they've been doing weird stuff. Like they stopped doing it this week, but they were running agilities and bunny on Volskaya, so you just know they're going to go dive 24/7.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Like it's just
that's
like,
not even good on Volskaya, right? Well, it is on point B. It's still viable there, but obviously point A has become so Widowmaker dominated that they just got destroyed.
Yeah. But then if they have like Bunny and Soon, they can't really play Tracer Genji. It's like the same situation we had with like me, Sinatra, and then me and Baby Bay, or Sinatra, Baby Bay, whatever we do. Like there's always just a gap in that one DPS hero, or the one category you can't play. And
so
it's a
really
problem.
It's really up to KSF to really fill that gap.
Yeah.
That's not a great place to be in, though, that you have a player who has literally played one map on the stage in Overwatch League as a professional player. Didn't go well for him, for whether it was his fault or his team's fault. We can put that up for debate, but it didn't go well for him, and now they have to rely on the Widow Genji flex player, which is what we were talking about earlier, which is why I think Architect is such an important signing for the Shock, because having that guy right now is very good. Really? Or having Prophet who can play Tracer and Genji, so at least somebody else can play Widow, and you still have Genji, you still have the Genji Widow combination, or the Tracer Widow combination, and you can make more flexibility there. Also, interestingly, Prophet is probably his. I pulled some stats for him the other day, where it was a combination of his ranks in major statistical categories on both Tracer and Genji, and I think the lowest he was in was like 12th in some category, and the next lowest was 5th. So if you combine his stats across all Tracer and Genji players, he's like insane. He's like by far the best Tracer Genji player, combo player in the league.
Okay. Right. Where is the Houston?
Oh, you know what's
outlaw?
funny, actually, Dante? Yeah. I think you were number 2.
Oh, dang.
In terms of the Tracer Genji flexing.
Where do you think the Houston Outlaws are? Because obviously they're another team that's in the hunt to get in the playoffs potentially. They've got a schedule where they're going to play a Shock and then they have to play a Seoul Dynasty, so not impossible they can win these games. Where do you think Houston is at the moment? Have they stemmed the bleeding? Are they back?
I think it's like the same DPS problem. Like they just can't run certain comps. Like maybe with Arhan they'll be able to play Tracer Genji more, but that's even hard because Linkster he like wasn't a Tracer player until like stage 2. I think that's when he started playing her, and like
Linkster
he didn't
seems
play
like
her much.
all-in Tracer too.
Yeah, so it just seems like their hero pool is kind of whack. Like if they picked up like a really good Tracer player, I think it would have been fine, like Stitch or something. But
then you have communication issues, and I think that's what's so difficult about this enigma that is the Houston Outlaws, because the way they are winning games is because their comms are really tight. And their ult economy is super efficient. So like you can tell they know exactly how to, like their game knowledge is great. They know how to sequence their ultimates. They know how to deal with a variety of situations, but they're doing it with a suboptimal hero composition because they can't play these heroes, or when they do play these heroes, they lack playmaking ability. For example, when Houston played Gladiators and I was watching Jake run around and not be able to hit you the entire time on Widowmaker when he should have been able to finish you off Surefour in the back lines a lot of those times. Part of it was Shaz doing a good job healing for you, sure, but there were also times, and I know you remember these, where you're like running around shooting at each other and you're like in machine gun mode for like 8 seconds, just like firing, and he's like missing 3 clips, and it was just a shit show.
Yeah, I think like their tank line, like their core is just so solid that it doesn't really like their teamwork is just so good that like individual performances don't mean that much. Like I was watching the Overwatch League and I remember seeing the stat on Blizzard World. Jake was like 5 and 8 or something, and they won the map. On like his Tracer stats, it was literally like 5 and 8, and they like won the map. I'm like, holy.
And here's something interesting about their Tracer stats. So I was curious. So I had Captain Planet pull up Jake and Linkster's combined Tracer stats for this stage and then compare them to stage 1 and 2, because I was watching them play, and on the eye test I was like, okay, they look better. But the thing is, they didn't improve individually at all. Basically, the Tracer stats are still terrible for both of these players. But the thing is, they play smarter around the Tracer now, and they'll create traps on maps where like Tracer's behind you and then they sandwich you. And it's not the Tracer doing more damage or being more efficient. It's just that they got better at using Tracer in ways that other teams don't, because they don't have a good Tracer, which is smart. So like my problem is we can say, okay, let's put Arhan in this lineup, but I'm not sure that really fixes the problem, because it may increase playmaking potential, but their most valuable asset right now is their coordination, and it will go down. So where is the trade-off you can make? Like, sure, it may improve their Tracer play, but is it worth the hit to the other thing? Is there a way that this team can really improve that doesn't cost them what they've got going that's so good already? I don't think there is.
I mean, Linkster and Jake have been getting better at Tracer, but not into the way that like the Tracer one tricks play. I think like Linkster or Jake are able to adapt that mindset or that skill set that like all the Tracer one tricks have, where they just know when they can get into like a carry spot and just kill everyone instead of like the smart flanky plays that catch people off guard. Then I think they could become like a really strong team, because they can keep that coordination. But it's up to them on if they can learn the hero to its full potential or not.
Yeah, it's super hard. It's like a hero that just takes so much playtime, and like,
I mean, I can just throw. I've got the numbers for you, so you can like hear them right now. Which is that Jake. So, for example, both players combined had 7.09 final blows per 10 minutes in stage 2. In stage 3, Jake has 7.75, and Linkster has 7.4, which puts them in 15th and 16th place respectively out of all 21 Tracer players in the league. So, like, remember, there are only 12 teams, and their ranks are 15 and 16. Damage, 14 and 16. Eliminations per 10 minutes, 20th and 18.
That Muma guy's fucking good at Overwatch, isn't he?
Yeah, no. I actually respect Muma so much. I think he's like a top 3 main tank. Like, he's great. So good. Yeah. He's insane. And like,
deaths, they're 18, and Linkster is last at 21 out of 21 Tracers in terms of deaths per 10 minutes.
That's what I said about Linkster being an all-in player. He seems like very, I'm going to kill you or you're going to kill me kind of thing.
Except he just dies. It's
So it gives them the option. They just keep choosing to kill him.
But the point I'm making is, if you watch Houston games this stage, you wouldn't think that from watching them. But it's because they're better as a team around playing around the Tracer. And I admire them for like trying to figure out how to minimize their weaknesses, but it is just really hard.
Right, this episode has been really long. So my question is this, right? We haven't talked about Florida Mayhem or Dallas Fuel.
Oh God.
Do any of these teams need to be spoken? Okay, let's talk about Florida Mayhem. Because obviously,
so tired of talking about. Like, Effect isn't even here. Apparently, rumor is he's not even going to come back till stage 4. So what the fuck is the point, really?
Literally rage quit the Overwatch League.
He needed a break.
He needed a fucking break. You're right. You are damn right. In both senses. Okay then. So obviously Florida Mayhem got the benefit of getting to play Dallas Fuel, so they got a win there. Whereas Florida Mayhem in the era where they have Sire play, because the thing is, I always see loads of sick highlights from him, but then when I watch the games, it's like, they weren't going to win this game. They're probably not going to win this game. This map wasn't that close, you know. What do you think?
I think the question is, how are they still losing games when Saya players getting like these insane 4Ks? Like, how do you not snowball that?
Yeah, that was something that happened with Baby Bay. Like, Baby Bay would just pop off and we still lose. And it's like, I feel like it's so discouraging as a player. Like, you just pop off and you lose, and it's like, how does it get much better than this? Like, that's peak performance.
The whole, you have to play around the Widowmaker with a certain plan. I think with Florida Mayhem, they're like, all right, we got side player. This guy's insane at Widow. Does he pop heads? Sweet, he's popping heads. But they don't like use his popping heads, if that makes any sense. Like, a lot of it's like, oh, he popped heads. Let's create forward momentum, set up here so they can't even get to him, and now he can pop off more heads. It seems like they're kind of just chilling, and then side player pops heads, and they're like, it worked. If it doesn't work, they're like, fuck. So it's like, that's why I say like Widowmaker's like 80% team base, where it's like you don't want to rely on the Widowmaker to hit shots. Like, she's just like an extension of the comp. You want to use her like pressure and her threat. Sure, if the Widowmaker heads headshots, you're gonna win more, but you don't want to be in that win more situation all the time. You want to just be able to use her.
So let's talk about Widowmaker, which we have a lot this episode, but the thing is not only is he doing these crazy things just in general in the games, but he actually has the highest on a losing team kill death ratio of any Widowmaker in the league. For every one time he's killed, he kills 3.75 Widowmakers. So he nearly kills other Widows at like a 4-to-1 ratio. And considering that usually what happens in the current metagame is if the Widow duel is won, well, then the Widow just kills everybody else because there's nobody putting the Widow in check anymore in a 6 versus 5.
Yep.
So how the hell can Florida lose when they kill nearly 4 Widowmakers to every time their own dies? Like, you would think that stat would mean Florida is like winning 75% of their games.
Yeah,
because it's
like
so important. It's so important.
Which goes to what I say is like, they're pretty much relying on side player and not like using his position. Because I don't think the Widow should be having to kill that much. Because if he's killing that much because his team isn't doing anything. So they're like relying on him to do it. Whereas if like, say I get a headshot on the Widow, I pretty much don't get any other kills because my team's just using all that pressure to get their own kills.
In their match against Valiant, didn't they lose the Junkertown? Where side player was like 30 and like 10 and like Soon was like 10 and 20. Like, that's just insane.
He was putting Soon in the dumpster that game.
Yeah, I didn't see the match. I just saw the stats. But yeah, I was like, wait, Valiant won that map? What? That's insane. Like, I couldn't imagine like playing, like just losing that much and just still like winning. Like going Tracer, like imagine I just like go like 5 and like 15. I'm like, how do we win that? Like, that's just insane. Like,
Overwatch team game.
Yeah.
Yes, it definitely is. So now they've replaced the tank. The support play, I think, is probably the weakest part right now of this team. It seemed like Logix was out for a week for whatever reason, and so that was a bit underwhelming because I think like he actually is a very good player.
Yeah,
and
I think he's insane.
Like his level has gone up. He actually saved their ass against the Shanghai Dragons by just not dying at all on Route 66.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Logix is a god. Like his Tracer is so good. His Widow is insane too. and yeah, he just didn't get that much credit. And it sucks
So-
that they picked
And
someone
Tuvix's been going up too. So like we know their DPS is not an issue on this team.
Yeah.
And also, we would think, okay, Manitin has actually been one of the more consistent parts of this roster. They replaced Awesome Guy. So I think you really, at this stage, have to say that it's like the supports that are the huge issue. Something is going wrong with the support line and their ability to not die and also be able to heal up their.
Yeah, I think it's what Surefour was saying. There's probably like internal issues that we're not really aware about, and like there's a lot more things. Like maybe they don't really get good value out of ults, because I think ults are so important. Like you need to get value out of them, and if you're not getting value, like you can out mechanic the other team so hard, but if they're getting more value out of their ults, then that's just like you lose.